Hey y'all, how are you? Thank you so much for joining the stream, whether you're going to be here live or on playback. How are we doing? Today is a lesson about world build and cosmogony, but basically it's also a study hall because this live is really just going to complete this presentation and hopefully I get to speak to some of y'all about all the sacred texts that I've kind of been filtering through. So welcome, and we will get started. But yeah, let me make sure that I have the chat available so I don't miss anything. And I'm going to lower the music. How are you guys? It's been a while since I've been live, so I'm excited to get back in it. I've been reading so much. It's honestly been a blessing to get into these texts. I have a plan basically to write my own novels. It's going to be a quadrilogy, so 4 books, and I'm a life path 4. That's kind of why I chose that. But basically, I wanted to spend the rest of this year before I turn 33 next year, and you guys all know how interesting that number is, so I want to be able to say that I wrote my first book at 33. So while I'm 32 right now, I thought, well, why not spend this time researching and making sure that the world I'm building for my novels is really concrete and based off of sacred scriptures and information that we know from ancient times and or even more recent modern texts. So that's kind of what I'm getting at with this presentation and stream, and I'll show you on the back end of how I keep my notes. And in the future, I'm going to make this an official video, so all the silences and filtering will be cut out, and it'll be a much streamlined video, so it'll be easier to take notes. In the future, I will also make my Google Sheets docs, any spreadsheets or anything that I make, I will share with you guys, because I think if you have a resource to build upon, it's going to be free, and that way you don't have to do all this work that it really is really tedious, and with the help of AI and all that, it's really not become a barrier anymore. So yeah, free resources, why not? Already have Sam in the comment. Hi, how are you? Good to see you. I'm managing to put the chat box here, but I might move around at some point. Okay, so basically, first of all, what I want to talk about is what cosmogony means. So I have this presentation here, break it down with the etymology. So cosmos is Greek word for world, and gonia is the Greek word for origin. So what we have here, cosmogony, is world origin, world build, however you see it. But this is a photo from Flat Earth Dave. It's actually, a picture. It's obviously an animation. It's a mock-up of what Flat Earth Dave has provided for us of the flat earth, because he has years of research, and you're familiar that I recently interviewed Dave Wise, Flat Earth Dave. Good, I am well, thank you for asking. Yeah, I'm super excited. I've been reading, and I'm going to get into more exciting books. Like right now, I felt like the need to start with the sacred text, but in the future, we're going to look at, well, political writings too, but then after we get through that, we will look at some of the earlier fiction novels and then get into like the modern fiction novels. So by the end of the year, like, I'll definitely have read Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, Harry Potter again to revisit it, Twilight, Hunger Games, and any of the other major media mogul books that were turned into movies. Okay, so the reading list has been pretty complex because I really wanted to make sure that I at least covered some knowledge of every major religion and their sacred texts. And this is something that not everyone needs to do, but if your novel wants to go that far and you want to make these references and have your audience be global, I think it's really important to just look outside of your own religion, outside of your own country, and take a look at what all the world religions have to offer so that you can pick and choose what you like from each of them. And that's exactly what I'm doing. Next slide. So there has been much controversy, I guess, or like people haven't really decided which came first, Mesopotamia or Egypt. But I did read a criticism book, and this book said that it was Mesopotamia first. So the book was written by Joseph Campbell, and he's an author that has done meticulous research about world religions. So if he says that Mesopotamia is the cradle of civilization, then I kind of believe it. But there are some sources that will tell you that Egypt was first. Basically, it's around the same time. But the Sumerian Tablets are one of the first, if not the first, sacred texts to ever exist. And I think it's in cuneiform, I believe, yeah. But basically, it's 3100 BC is around the time that they were written. None of these dates, by the way, are when they were discovered. That's later. I'll just mention that some of them, disclaimer, were discovered a lot earlier in history, so they might be fabricated or false. And you have to kind of go into it knowing that everything in history might be misrepresented or misaccurate. So going in with that in mind, just know that there's also a lot of religious context you can get from the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is a fiction novel. It really is. But I didn't feel right including it with the fiction book stream because it also has so much about deities that you can refer to it as kind of a pantheon for the Mesopotamian culture. Egypt, we got the pyramid texts and the Book of the Dead. Now you're gonna be familiar with a lot of the Egyptian deities. That's when Egypt was a polytheistic country or religion, that area, because later on, obviously, with the founder of Atenism, it became one of the first monotheistic religions because they started to worship just Aten, the sun god. But before Aten, there was polytheism in Egypt. Like if you remember Ra and Horus, Isis. So yeah, this is where you get some of the information is from the pyramid text. Okay, Hinduism, everyone should be rather familiar with as well, but you might not know that there's several sacred texts. So the Vedas, the Rig Veda is part of the Vedas, the Upanishads and the Puranas, and there's more that we'll see in my document. But basically, if you're familiar with Krishna or, goodness, who else? I'm blanking. Hindu gods. I have so many of them down listed. But let me just confirm because my mind is blank when I stream. I want to say like Shiva, but the thing is with, okay, list me Hindu deities. And I know that before Hinduism, there was Dravidianism, which was like the earlier start of this Hindu mythology. Okay, so Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, Lakshmi, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing all these correctly, but Kali, Durga. Okay, so a lot of these deities have several versions of themselves, so you're going to see a lot of names, but maybe it just refers to different aspects of the same deity. And finally, we get to some pantheon that most of us will be familiar. It's with the Greek pantheon, Zeus, Hera. oh my gosh, why am I blanking, right? Athena, Minerva, Hermes, Ares, Aphrodite, Poseidon, you get the point. Well, one thing I want to say really quick is that I had for all my life had heard of the Greek deities, but never had I heard of like the sacred texts. And Theogony is the sacred text of the Greek Pantheon. So if you want to learn about the history of like how that religion began, read Theogony. It's from 15,000 BC. I love that book. We'll take a look at it. And from the fiction side, we have the Iliad and the Odyssey, but again, there's so much about the Greek pantheon in those books that they're kind of in line with the sacred text. Okay, Canaan is one of the most overlooked religions, but it's one that the elite have basically provided some information for us. Why? Because we got the Balenciaga scandal. So we know that in Canaan religion, they worship Baal. And so it's important to understand that the land of Canaan is super ancient. They were the settlers there before, the Old Testament. So yeah, you gotta kind of look at it. And we're gonna look at the Ugaritic Texts. Taoism is such a beautiful religion. The I Ching and the Tao Te Ching, I think they're from different countries, but they believe in a similar religion, the Taoism. And to me, this was like so similar to the idea and the concept of worship of the void, and you'll see why. Okay, Christian is one of the first monotheistic religions after Egypt, right? After Atonism, you will find, did we skip? Where's the, oh, I think I had a slide for Judaism, but sorry, skipped it. We'll get to that too. So before Christianity, we're going to obviously have Judaism. So Judaism would have been one of the first monotheistic religions after the Aten Egyptian worship. But Christianity, we're going to look at the Apocrypha, which is one of the banned books, and the New Testament, which everyone's familiar with. Okay, Roman religion is the Ennead. The Ennead. I'm not sure why I have this slide here. I might have messed up the timing. This is all gonna get finished in the next few days. I just wanted to stream anyway, so you know my process. Okay, Buddhism, the Tripitaka, I think it's with a T-R. See, it's like they're gonna make so many mistakes. There's a lot to learn, and it's overwhelming, especially when this isn't, like, I never went into school to study this. I was never a religious major, but it's something that you have to, I was a filmmaker, but to be a good filmmaker, you have to know this. To be a good artist, you have to know these things. So whether or not it's difficult, yes, it will be difficult, and you're going to make mistakes, and you're going to be politically incorrect so many times, but that's part of the process. And next is what I really enjoyed. If I had to choose what religion I would say I am, it would be Gnostic. Like, I believe more in the Gnostic lore and the Gnostic teachings than any other that I've read. So, yeah, the Nag Hammadi, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Like, it's just calls to my soul to read it. I really enjoy it. And we're going to take a look at the scripts. Part of the Nag Hammadi library is the Pistis Sophia. So there's several books. That's why it's called a library. Mayan culture, I've actually been near this area before, so I find it interesting. And I visited near Mexico. And then Catholic is the Latin Vulgate is their main Bible, and the Nicene Creed is when they declared their religion. the Quran we're briefly going to look at, and Shinto religious texts, Anglo-Saxon texts, Celtic, Norse, Poetic Edda, prose like Thor and Loki, that's from there, and the Codex Borgia, the Aztec belief system. Okay, what I found from this study is that most major religions, there's a concept of the void. The void is the source god for most religions. So I find that fascinating, and that's partly why my pen name is NetVoid. And as you can see, so now it's like doing the research as to why I think my pen name is important to my book novels. So the narrator of my book novels is going to be the void. So you're reading a book from the void, which is my pen name, but I'm basically channeling. It's not me writing a book. I'm hoping to channel the void to write this book, and these book series is going to be in the point of view of primarily the void. It's going to have several protagonists, but this is the main protagonist. And that's what I find so fascinating is like, look, you start with Atlantean mysticism, because there are some books that do talk about that, in Sumerian, Egyptian, Canaan, Mayan, Hinduism, Babylonian, Adanism, Judaism, Celtic, Greek, Jewish, mysticism, Buddhism, Confucianism, Norse, Zoroastrian, Jainism, Shinto, Taoism, Roman mythos, Christianity, Gnosticism, Catholicism, Islam, Aztec belief system, Sikhism, Protestantism, Enochian, Mormon, and so on, all confirm there is some sort of primordial void. Okay, so next, what I really enjoyed about reading into the world build from these religious sacred texts is that the belief that these primordial gods create the universe, and from that, what I love the most about reading the Gnostic lore is the belief of the simulation. So that's the angle I'm going to take. I'm going to look at all world religions from the Gnostic angle and belief system and incorporate that as my main angle, right? Okay. So we're going to look at how we break down the order, because there's a timeline, there's a chronological sacred timeline of how things were created, in my opinion, okay? And this is from the opinion of having read about this in the different sacred texts. And one of the things I learned about Egyptian mythology is that in the polytheistic religion, that is, there was 8 source gods paired as male and female that created the solar system, the sun, etc., the Milky Way, the planets, the Earth, everything, from a cosmic egg. So these are the names in Egyptian. It's like Kok, Koket, Ha, Amun, Nun. You get it, Hawhet. All of those are over here, right? So they all represent something. So there's actually void god Ha and Hawhet in the Ogdoad. The Ogdoad, the etymology of Ogdoad is the 8. So this really is saying the 8. So there's 8 source gods. 8 is that symbol of eternity, right? So that's interesting already. From 8, you also get the 33, because there's a 3 and a 3 if you split the 8 in the middle and reverse it. I think I have an image shortly to explain that more. But okay, so I found that fascinating. So Ha and Hawhet are the void god and goddess. Space and infinity, basically, they represent the void. So right here. God of void, goddess of void. So 1, 2. 2 of them are the void. Then we get here, God of eternity and goddess of eternity. God of fresh water and god of salt water. God of air and goddess of air. So there's no fire, interesting enough, but there's water. And most major religions do confirm that it was water that was one of the first elements to create everything. So it's interesting that we have that confirmation of like, okay, so we got the void gods, we got the eternity or space or whatnot, fresh water, salt water, and air. And these allegedly are similar to the Big Bang. It's the cosmic egg. So these get together, create the Big Bang. And this is in the heliocentric model, which we believe is a false model. But in their model, they do imply the same thing. They imply that the void, like space or eternity, and water and air and sound, vibration, air, sound, created this Big Bang that created everything. So it's fascinating to have seen that through studying Egyptian mythos. So again, that Big Bang, because I just put 8, those same 8 that we talked about, I just put them here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And that creates the Big Bang. The Big Bang creates our solar system. And that's when we start to see Saturn, the sun, the moon. Here, Saturn, the sun, the moon. What's interesting is that they called it a cosmic egg. And that's not something that I made up. That's actually, when you're researching this topic, the 8 in Egyptian mythos, you get the cosmic egg. So it's interesting that egg-made universe equals cosmic torus. And if you're not aware of ready, like where I'm getting that from, is so I want to share with y'all the calculator, right? The calculator that I basically, I'm the webmaster, but it was coded for our behalf, but I host it. And so I'm using this calculator. I'm typing in cosmic egg. What was it? The cosmic egg. Egg-made universe. Egg-made universe. Egg-made universe in ordinal equals the cosmic egg. Oh. No, what does it equal? I think something like that. Cosmic torus. Okay, does everyone know what a torus is? The torus field is an 8. The egg was made by the 8. A torus has the shape of an 8. Okay, so now everyone's familiar with the calculator. We can pull this back up. So now you understand this 8 symbolism over here, right? Do you understand this 8 symbolism? That egg-made torus was made by the 8, and the cosmic torus has the shape of an 8, and that's the torus field over the earth. And as above, so below, so that humans also have a torus field. A lot of people have called it the Merkaba, but the Merkaba is part of the torus field. So the torus is also allegedly how we have source energy into our simulation or our flat earth. Okay, so the cosmic egg is in several religions in world mythology. We got the Egyptian, which is, I just talked about the cosmic egg from the Ogdoad The Ennead from the Egyptian polytheistic religion. We also have it in Greek Orphism, the Orphic egg, and the golden egg in Hindu mythology, Japanese mythology, Dogon mythology. As you can see, it's a theme. So that's what I want to go with. You might find something else, but this is what I found through my research and something that's going to help guide me, put references in my books, in my novels, that people are like, oh, I get it. This is a reference to that religion. Because I personally, I find this, the content that already exists totally interesting and something that I draw influence on. But if you want to create your entire new concept, you can also do that. You could create something entirely new, but at least you now know what already exists, right? So in Gnosticism, the planets were created for a simulation, and they're called the archons, and they influence human activity. So it's interesting that in astrology, they say that the planets physically affect us. Not only do they give us the personal characteristics from the time we were born, but they also guide us year by year by year, and they influence us that way. Because technically we're all water, we're all atoms, we're all made of the same fabric. So it makes sense that there's some sort of psychic energy that's happening, and that we're being led by the energy and the influence of these planets, which is wild and interesting, and something that's not very much been explored yet in popular like science fiction too much. What I'm also bringing to my book series that I think a lot of other world builds might not, like, I don't even think Lord of the Rings, the series draws on every single world religion. I think it only chose I think Tolkien only chose a few religions to draw influence on. So as you see, I'm trying to do something different and take inspiration from most major religions. And what I found, and what's so obvious, everyone's going to find if you're digging up this research, is that for each major religion, there's a deity that corresponds with a certain planet. It's been personified. So you'll recognize a lot of these, and Cronus, Saturn. The Greek mythos are probably the easiest to recognize because you got Apollo, the sun god, Demeter, the moon goddess, Zeus, god of Jupiter, Poseidon, Neptune, Hades is, what is that? Pluto, Mars, Aries, Venus, Aphrodite, over there, and I forget who that, Hermes for Mercury, yeah. But yeah, you can also, it's like possible for you to take these gods and write them into your novels. Let me just double check ChatGPT, but I think that you can do that. So because I don't want to quote wrongly on that, but let me just double check. Is it Roy Cop? Is it? What's it called? Okay, so incorporating gods or figures from sacred texts into your novel is generally allowed as long as certain considerations are followed. So public domain, respect and sensitivity. Right, so it's basically legal as long as you adhere to those. And that's what I'm going to do. So I'll just research a bit more about the public domain side of things, but other than that, it's a free right to use them in your novels. So a lot of people point out that back even in the first Sumerian tablets, which is ranked as one of the first ever written and preserved, that there is a sky god and a earth goddess. But what you'll see throughout several other religions is that they're going to flip-flop. So sometimes it'll be the sky goddess and earth god. So you can play around with your world build if you want to personify your pantheon that way. I know I am. I'm including them. Okay, so I wanted to point out 1 second that this is the Egyptian version. So as you can see, it's now the sky goddess and the earth god, whereas the sky god and the earth goddess before. So they've been flip-flopped. Up to you again. But it is interesting that it does depict it as a dome. And so that's why a lot of these ancient religions did believe in a flat earth and incorporated it into their pantheons. And again, now planet Earth is personified by gods the Greeks call the Titans. So the Titans is an idea for you if you're interested, because you can stop at like just reading about Zeus and Hera, but if you go deeper than that, you'll realize that Zeus was the son of Cronus, and Cronus was a Titan. So you want to understand that they believed in kind of a let's talk about Egypt or Greek. So, no, specifically Greece, about the Titans. It's like when the world was inhabitable, that's when the Titans existed, basically. So once Earth started to become habitable by humans, when humans were created, that's when you get the Olympian gods. But before that, that means that there was a time, or at least the Greeks believed there was a time prehistorically to the humans. So you want to include that. Ideally, if you're taking a world build based off Earth, you'll probably want to imply in whatever you're writing that there was a time where there was this idea that there wasn't humans yet. And some of them say that before humans, the gods, the deities themselves incarnated and lived in the simulation or in what they created as this Earth. So they lived here. That's what like Atlantis was all about too. What I find interesting about the Egyptian gods is that this is taken from the Book of Wisdom, but some gods, again, they represent, you might hear different names for it, but they could represent the same thing. So Ra, Horus, Set, and Osiris are all symbolic of the sun. It's just different times of the sun. So when the sun is at full, you get Ra. When the sun is setting, you get Set. Ironically, his name is Set because the sun is setting. That's not the reason, but it's funny that turned out in English. And then Osiris is when it's midnight, it says. So yeah, that's when it's really dark. So that's why Osiris is more known as the goddess of darkness, the underworld, because he personifies night as well, which is just the absence of the sun, right? So they're just different names for the same concept, which is something you can do in your own when you're making up characters as well. And who's this? Horus. Okay, that's right in the morning. I want to say 6 a.m. Okay, so now the humans were created by these demigods for a paradox of reasons. So as I was saying, these gods might have been dwelling in the simulation because why were they in the simulation? Because again, we're talking about gods inspired by the planets, and the planets are the simulation. So remember, these gods were before the simulation. That's why they're not really personified as having arms and legs or anything. They're just like these etheric beings. Once we get the Big Bang, in most of these religions is when we see the formation of the planets and the universe as we know it. Because why? Because it's constricted by time, and we know Saturn is a time lord. Saturn is personified Kronos. Kronos in Greek means time, right? So the Time Lord is saying to us that this is a simulation. In the simulation exists the concept of now, of the now, of time. So prior to that, time doesn't exist. Okay? So that's why we have these deities existing in the simulation, because they're not as connected to source. They're after the Big Bang or whatever. So they are the ones that, these demigods are the ones that create the human race. Okay, so I wanted to finish this presentation. It's not yet done. But as you can see, I'm not done with it. I have a lot more to go. But I wanted to show you guys anyway. I'm going to finish this. We're going to look at my Google Sheets document. Then we're going to look at my character build list. And then we're going to finish off with looking through some videos that will kind of help explain these religions a bit more. But before I go into that, let's finish this. What also is interesting about Egyptian mythos, the pyramid texts, you get that understanding that Egyptians believed in soul immortality, right? This is so old, so ancient. So, right? Again, I said like Egypt and Sumeria, they're kind of combating for what's the most ancient text. So you could almost say Egypt and Sumerian. They're very similar in antiquity. And if that's the case, I mean 2600 BC plus, then that is, wow, so enlightening that those people, our ancestors allegedly, believed in soul immortality as just a day-to-day thing. And that's something that's been robbed from us and taken away from us, to now believing in soul immortality is weird, it's strange, it's a cult. Why? Why, when our ancestors, according to our own textbooks that they teach us in these classes, if they believed it, if they believed the earth was flat, why is it so much of a mockery to believe it now? But anyway, so they believed in soul immortality, and they had preparations for the physical body, so at death, the soul could become liberated. And what we see is the Ka, Ba, and the Ak. The Ka is a person's life force, the Ba is the soul, and the Ak is the resulting entity. So even back then, they were trying to make sure that even after one passes, your soul is still connecting in the right order in the afterlife. So as the life force and the soul leave the physical body, it would become an activated soul through the Ak and not get lost and whatnot. All right, so that's a good preparation for now. I'm obviously not finished with that. Like I said, I'll make an actual video for my channels, so there's no babbling or anything, and it'll be all done. But yeah, let me go into my document now. Now that I've explained that. Okay. So I wanted to show you guys this because it's something I'm super proud of. I feel so relieved to have even thought of it. The reason I haven't done this before is because I didn't even think I needed it. And let me tell you, I've been designing a book concept for 10 years. It's not nothing new. If you look at my hard drive back in 10 years ago, you will see scripts with this idea, this book novel series idea that I've had for 10 years, right? For 10 years, I've failed to get anything on paper further than a few scripts. The reason is I felt I was channeling a book that was too complicated to put down on paper, and it overwhelmed me. And so I never started and I procrastinated. But I'm telling you that all you need to do is you don't even need to go and read all of these sacred texts. All you have to do is scan through them. Scan through them so that you understand some of the messages that resonate with you. All you're looking for is things that you can use. Wait out stuff that you don't need, but put it all together, and I will share with you guys this document once it's all done so that you have it and you can have a shortcut, a free shortcut to understanding this easier and building references for your own book series, if it's helpful. Like, I'm trying to gather a community of writers that want to use this sacred text and information in order to bulk up their work, right? Okay. What we start with is the Sumerian Tablets up here. Again, the Ogdoad and the Ennead. There's not really a sacred text, but it's just a philosophy. Pyramid text, coffin text, Egyptian Book of the Dead, Great Hymn to the Aten, Babylonian, Enuma Elish, Atrahasis, the Epic of Gilgamesh, Hinduism, the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Mahabharata, I don't know if I said that right, the Bhagavad Gita, the Puranas, the Yoga Sutras, the Aramana letters of Canaan, the Ugaritic Texts, Jewish Tanakh, Dead Sea Scrolls, Sefer Yetzirah, the Zohar, the Septuagint, the I Ching, 5 classics and 4 books, the Confucian Analytics, the Greek Theogony, the Iliad, the Odyssey, the Orphic hymns, Tao Te Ching, Kojiki. Now we get Catholic, Codex Vaticanus, Buddhism, the Pali Canon, Lotus Sutra, Tibetan Book of the Dead, Roman, the Ennead, Metamorphosis, the Christian New Testament, the City of God, Nag Hammadi Library of the Gnostic Texts, and we're going to have the Hypostasis of the Archons, what else, like the Gospel of John, Apocryphon of John, Gospel of Thomas, Emerald Tablets, Celtic Mythology, we have the Liber Kabbalah Erin, again, I don't really understand if I said that right, Islam, the Quran, Norse, the Poetic Eddas, Prose Edda, Christian, we have the 95 Protestant Thesis, but before that, the Summa Theologica, King James Bible, Aztec Codex Borgia, the Mayan Popol Vuh, Enochian Keys, Sikhism, Guru Granth Sahib, Mormon, the Book of Mormon, Thelema, the Book of the Law, Jehovah's New World of Holy Scriptures, Scientology, Dianetics, Scientology, the Fundamentals of Thought, Scientology, the Handbook, and the Satanic Bible. So these are the major sacred texts, and yeah, look how I've been structuring it, right? So here I have a link to all of it. So I have a little disclaimer, like I said, they were written around this time, but they were discovered much later. I have a breakdown of all the gods that are mentioned, like Anu, the sky god, Enlil, Enki, Ninhursag, Inanna, Marduk later on. History lesson, introduction, a little bit about the plot. Anything, direct quotes that I found interesting, and that might be that I might need, right? So I did this for every one of them. So let's see. something like, I want to read the Odyssey, right? So in the Odyssey, no, I've already read it, but say you haven't read it. You here, like, I have the motifs. It's kind of like a Spark Notes, and that's how you need to see it. And it doesn't have to be too complicated. I've also like made highlighter on my book, so I can show you guys that, how I actually highlight the books. Tibetan Book of the Dead. So as you can see, this is something that takes a long time, but it's super fun. The Nag Hammadi library, again, one of my favorite things. And one thing that I need to point out too is that for every one of them, I'm including the link. So the link of where I can read it for free. And all of these are public domain in the sense that they're available to read online. So yeah, some of them are stunning books. Like, I want to say the Codex Borgia, I'm not even sure how to say it, to be honest. Like, some of them are like pictographs and they're beautiful. Like, I just, even like the Scientology books are stunning, some of them. Oh, this might be a PDF. Let's see. I'll show you the Scientology handbook. It's actually like a proper handbook. It's hilarious. So, I couldn't really take much notes on this because it didn't have. So one thing you should know about these internet archives is that obviously here you can only like drag and drop. They're gonna let you borrow it, so you can see more than the limited preview. You don't have to pay to borrow it. It's just a license to use it for a while. But even if I wanted to copy and paste, I can't. So that's the frustrating thing about some of them. Usually here they will have like a text version, so you can actually copy and paste. But yeah, it's interesting to see how all these different books package it. Like even the Satanic Bible, you have to approach it with a neutral mindset. You can't approach it with a predisposed prejudice, because you're gonna be surprised that a lot of these texts don't necessarily say the things that you think they're gonna say. And so you're just kind of like a reporter gathering news, is what I'd say with this. Let's see if the Poetic Eddas are any pretty. Oh, okay, so there's also Gutenberg. Gutenberg doesn't really have like the cover photo, but it is a good website to know. So anytime you're looking for it, just type in like, I don't know, you could say the Poetic Edda, but you have to put Gutenberg, or you have to put archive, and you'll find it. Okay, so what I wanted to do now is fill out these and make them green, and we're gonna watch the concepts so that we can talk about them. And I just received a comment, so let me let me see if I can read it. Sorry guys, I have so many tabs open that it's a bit difficult to to know where everything is. But yeah, I hope you guys are doing well. I'm just, yeah, it's not showing up. So what I'm gonna do is take the chat box and pull it up. Okay, so why are you including the Big Bang Theory? In my research, the Big Bang is pure information. So I'm not really including the Big Bang Theory per se, but I'm using it as a reference point because a lot of people believe in it. So as long as I can like show a pictograph of it, I think I can like I was pointing out, like, this is, you know, how it aligns with that theory. So it's a lot more open and approachable for people who believe that, because at the end of the day, if that's what you believe, that I have no problem with that, and nobody should have a problem. But yeah, Gematria is inherently incorporated into this book. So one of the Gnostic gods for the void is called Bythos. So let me type it into the calculator for you so you can see who my character and why my pen name. So if you put in Bythos, which is a god, void god, this is how I incorporate Gematria, for example. So Bythos is a void god in Gnostic mythos, and I'm a Gnostic to a certain extent. That's like what I believe in. So yeah, and yeah, a lot of the sacred texts do align with the Big Bang. That's it. Let me show you a picture of Bythos. Okay, so this is Bythos art. It's like a void god. It's literally a void god. So this is kind of like the author of my book. So as you can see, I'm already finding ways to incorporate Gematria. Okay, I will move the chat. Oh my god, moving everything. It's so hard to read these things. Sorry, guys. Okay. Right. So I wanted to start off with, let me get my headphones on because I'll need them. I wanted to start off with some videos. Oh, for one thing, I really want to shout out my friend. She created this scriptures playlist, so she is really cool about researching all the world religions as well. So yeah, I recommend following her. True Seeker Alex, that's her username, but right now it's also My Lord EXE. And playlists. Yeah, so I recommend her as a resource too. She has a Patreon. Oh gosh, you get the point. Yeah, so let me just shut these down a bit because there are so many of them. Okay, I just clicked this top video, and I'm gonna scrub through it, but yeah, basically we're just gonna study things together, and yeah. Let me know if it's loud enough. 1 second.
The Nag Hammadi Library. This is a collection of early Christian and Gnostic texts discovered near the town of Nag Hammadi in Upper Egypt in 1945. These texts, written in Coptic, were found in a sealed jar buried in the sands, where they had been hidden for over 1,000 years. The discovery was a significant moment for scholars of early Christianity and Gnosticism, as it shed light on a range of beliefs and practices that were largely suppressed by Orthodox Christianity. The library consists of 13 leather-bound papyrus codices containing 52 treatises, including the famous Gospel of Thomas, Gospel of Philip, and Apocryphon of John. These texts represent a wide variety of theological perspectives, many of which differ sharply from the Orthodox teachings that became the foundation of mainstream Christianity. The Gospel of Thomas, for instance, is a collection of...
Okay, so that's what the sacred text that I most live off of. So if you understand that's where I'm coming from, we're gonna get back to that. But first, we're gonna go all the way to the beginning. Okay, so let's look at the Sumerian tablets and then get to Gnosticism, which is what I believe in. You just got a little teaser of that, and then we're going to go all the way down. And if you have any questions, please jot them down. I will catch them here. And I hope the audio is like loud enough. Some of these might be really strange. I've only vetted them a little bit by scrubbing through them, but if there's a topic that I disagree with, I'm just gonna shut it down. Oh, and to preface, this one is the Sumerian Tablets, and it's a animation by Spirit Science. I started growing up on Spirit Science years ago. They're a great foundation, but also they're one of those gatekeeper channels in my opinion, because they reveal certain things and leave out others. So we'll watch on through that lens, but yeah.
To discuss questions such as whether it has a beginning or an end, you have to be clear about what a scientific theory is. I shall take the simple-minded view that a theory is just a model of the universe, or a restricted part of it, and a set of rules that relate quantities in the model to observations that we make. It exists only in our minds and does not have any other reality, whatever that might mean. A theory is a good theory if it satisfies two requirements. It must accurately describe a large class of observations on the basis of a model that contains only a few arbitrary elements, and the way in which human history may have an impression of the phenomenal universe. A historical theory, on the other hand, is any other reality of the universe, justified and out of nowhere. This theory, with these ideas, the information.
Okay, finally. Oh my gosh. Hi, Maverick. It's so nice to see you, by the way. How are you? How have you been? Honestly, I haven't heard from you in a while. But I've also kind of been off Twitter, so. And again, this is like a background stream. Like, I'm just trying to get through tons of videos, so it might be quite boring. Please, I'm gonna put videos on 2x speed, but you can also put this video on 2x speed. It's very much appreciated if you if you just put this in the background. Okay, cool. Let's go.
The year is 1847. A young archaeologist named Austin Henry Layard was Indiana Jones in his way around ancient Mesopotamian ruins, where he properly identified and henceforth discovered the ancient Assyrian city-state of Nineveh in an area now known as Iraq. In an absolutely incredible discovery, he found 22,000 clay tablets hidden in the depths of the city. These tablets contained cuneiform, which today is one of, if not the earliest known writing systems known to man, created by the Sumerians 6,000 years ago. Over the years, more ancient historical cities were found and excavated. Many of the world's museums now count among their prize exhibits the ceremonial gates, winged bulls, chariots, tools, utensils, jewelry, statues, and other objects that have been dug out of the mounds that are Assyria and Babylon. But the true treasures of these kingdoms were their written records. Since the time of that discovery, we have believed that the first true civilization in all of humanity arose in Mesopotamian Sumer, located in present-day Iraq, around 6,000 years ago. This is now being challenged by the discovery of Göbekli Tepe, a far older site dating back nearly 11,000 years. However, this is a conversation we're going to save for a little later on. Now, Sumer translates to land of the civilized kings, and their culture exploded onto the scene virtually overnight, becoming the cradle of human civilization. Looking into the artifacts of Sumer is quite interesting, as they host a long list of archaeological firsts for the human race. Among these finds are the first schools, the first historians, the first methods of writing, the first library, the first doctors and pharmacopoeia, the first agriculture and farmer's almanac, the first musical notation, the first bicameral legislature, and the first taxes. The Sumerian legal code, also a first, included protection for divorced women, as well as price controls on foodstuffs and wagon rentals. We also see the invention of the wheel, the chariot, the sailboat, and the plow. They also invented our standard measurement of time. The concept of 60 seconds in a minute, and 60 minutes in an hour, and the 12 to 24-hour clock all started with the Sumerians. They also
60 minutes, 60 seconds and 60 minutes. The Sumerians worshipped the number 6. And as we can see, good to see you after a long time. Maverick, the elusive one. Yeah, honestly, it's so good how like we always cross paths randomly, but you're one of like the most talented decoders I've ever met online. So yeah, honestly, the way Maverick decodes is like so many. There's like, you know, when there's, I don't work with over 3 digits basically. So I'm impressed when people decode with over 3 digits and have all these mathematical knowledge. Like, I don't know much more than like prime functions. So the fact that you can incorporate more mathematical concepts into decoding, that's amazing. But okay, so a lot of this you guys probably already know, but I'm just trying to get to the part of the world creation.
Also developed the first astronomical and astrological systems, the first maps and cartography, and the first mathematics. Oh, they also seem to have invented beer, with archaeologists finding a 3,900-year-old Sumerian tales, epic contradictions between the tellings, due to how many cultures adopted the stories and fit them to their needs. Ancient History Encyclopedia writes, all of these seeming contradictions stem from Mesopotamia's long history and the different cultures which adopted the Sumerian gods. Generally, they're interpreted in one of several ways. The most socially acceptable interpretation today is generally that these gods are forces of nature or aspects of life, like night and day, birth and death, or the sun and the moon. Often, there are also specific times when the Sumerians reference planets or constellations, such as Jupiter or Mercury, or even the Pleiades, which for the record was one of the most significant and worshipped star clusters across all of Sumer. However, and generally the least accepted theory in modern academia, is that these gods represented actual physical beings called the Anunnaki, supposedly from the planet Nibiru, who were far more technologically advanced than we were, and who were involved in the creation of the human race. This idea has become very popular since the story first came out in the 1970s, and especially in the last 10 years or so, thanks to the internet and a growing interest in these subjects. In order to identify if there's any substantiated evidence to these claims, we're going to begin by looking at the Sumerian creation epic. Now, this rendition of the story is very simple because we don't actually have a lot of information to work with. This is because many of the tablets were broken with time, and also since the stories changed across generations as we looked at before. But with that said, let's have a look and see what we can discover about what the Sumerians believed regarding the creation of everything as interpreted and pieced together by various historians and scholars throughout history. The Sumerian creation epic begins with the primordial mother goddess named Namu, who many suggest represents the creative force behind the entire universe itself. She was the goddess sea who gives birth to the first actual gods. These are An and Ki, the sky and the earth, who are
Remember when I said that water was one of the most important gods? So that's interesting that the Sumerians already had that in. And so through water, she's creating the earth. What was it? Earth and sky? Yeah.
the first actual gods. These are An and Ki, the sky and the earth, who are generally interpreted as being one being, Anki, though some interpretations describe that they began as two. At any rate, An and Ki, or Anki, gives birth to a child named Enlil, the god of the air. Enlil cleaves An and Ki in two, implying they were singular, separating the heavens and the earth. Finally, Namu and An create Enki, who is the god of water and also the god of wisdom, mischief, crafts, and creation. This pantheon then goes on to create a number of other gods and goddesses, such as Utu and Nana, the sun and moon god, and so on. And many of these created gods seem to describe different aspects of the world. While there are a number of parables involving interactions between these deities, a great deal of the Sumerian creation epic revolved around these three characters, An, Enlil, and Enki, who form sort of their own trinity in a sense. In this story, eventually Namu has an idea and speaks with Enki, having him create human beings to assist the gods in their work. And other, perhaps even more common tellings of the story, it was Enlil's idea, who told Namu about it, who then gave Enki the task. This, in essence, is the basic idea of the original Sumerian creation epic, due to the passing along of stories over time and that many tablets are damaged. A lot of the details of this creation story we looked at remains a mystery. Now, you might be thinking, G-Patch, I'm not sure I see the parallel between what you just shared and the Bible. Are you sure that these are related? And the answer is absolutely. However, in order to see how we get from this to this, we have to look at the stories in the middle and see how this chain develops from here to here. The middle of the story between these two is found in the Babylonian creation epic, of which a far more complete telling exists today. In this story, it relates Namu with the mother goddess named Tiamat and Enlil with a being named Marduk. However, as you will soon see, there are significant differences in the way that these goddesses are portrayed in the literature.
Okay, so Kevin says, yeah, so in Genesis, in the Old Testament story, water is already there. Interesting. Nephilim is the Anunnaki and the angels. Yeah, because the Nephilim are in the Bible. And again, what he just said was that, well, hold up, how's the Bible related to Sumerian epic? But he's like, no, obviously the Bible is related, because the Bible had to draw influence on what was already existing. And since the Sumerian tablets are thousands of years older than the Old Testament, the Old Testament obviously borrowed stuff from this. So it's interesting. And let's look a bit more. I do have so much to get through, but I do find like this interesting right now. Oh.
Literature. Things are about to get very interesting. The Babylonian epic of creation begins with the primordial god and goddess, Apsu and Tiamat. These two are described as the god of fresh water and the goddess of salt water, which is commonly interpreted to be not as physical water, but primordial substance in the early universe. However, Apsu is sometimes seen as the freshwater aquifers underneath Mesopotamia, and Tiamat being the saltwater sea. In the story, Apsu also has a
Thank
vizier,
you.
whose name is Mumu. Together, Apsu and Tiamat mingle their waters, and they create two deities.
I got this new mic where you can like tap on and off when you're not talking, and I'm like, oh, obviously I was muted. Thank you. I was just saying like we were talking about the fresh water and the salt water.
Lamu and Lahamu. As they're growing, two more deities are created, Anshar and Kishar, who excel beyond the first two. Anshar and Kishar form Anu, who is quite powerful himself, who then begets Ea. Both Anu and Ea are the same beings as An and Enki from the previous story. All of these newly created children make a ton of noise and problems, surging back and forth, and disturb. She did nothing, and now she, a net, a bow with some arrows, distinguishes you mortal beings in paperback and hardcover, and then Yahweh Jireh, Yahweh Rapha, called the Enuma Elish, of which, when Marduk gets close enough to Tiamat, he first traps her and his wife, the birth fish, of which several main translations are available online, for anyone out there who's curious to read them. The story begins in a very similar way to the Sumerian edition that we discussed prior, with Namu. However, the Enuma Elish expands upon it further, taking the story into one of a terrifying battle and the rise of a new, very strong masculine power. Throughout history, this story gained prominence in Babylon, and as we heard in the story itself, is used to explain how Babylon came to be. And what does it have to do with us? Why do the static gods in the story are replaced by the younger, more dynamic gods? Other gods being created.
Okay, I feel like he's... Okay, can you hear me now? What I'm trying to say is that this is getting a bit too complicated now, so let's go to the next one.
Didn't fall.
That
Particular study.
No, too much. That.
Course. Here's what the first civilization ever to record history revealed about our past.
I think we get the point with the Sumerian Tablets. Let's move on to the Ogdoad really quick. I don't know if I'm still muted, to be honest. Let me just try. Okay, I understand now.
Ancient Egypt boasted a vibrant pantheon unlike any other. From Bastet, the fierce protector in the form of a black cat, to Thoth, the god of wisdom and writing depicted as an ibis-headed man, from the scorching sun, in Greek, were a group of 8 primordial deities associated with Hermopolis, their primary cult center. The city's name itself might be a clue to their significance. Kmun in Egyptian means 8, hinting at the importance of this number as a symbol of completeness or a cosmic principle. Unlike the readily recognizable gods with grand temples dedicated to them, the Ogdoad's presence was more subtle. Their veneration focused on their role as the primeval forces that existed before creation, before the sun first blazed across the sky, or the Nile carved its path through the desert sands. While grand statues or elaborate temples dedicated solely to the Ogdoad are rare, archaeologists have uncovered fascinating glimpses of them. Their presence appears in hieroglyphs and spells focused on creation myths. For instance, the Pyramid Texts, a collection of spells inscribed on the inner walls of pyramids from the Old Kingdom, mention the Ogdoad as the originators of all things. The location of their cult center, Hermopolis, is also significant. The city was known by the Egyptians as Khmunu the Great, and its association with the Ogdoad goes beyond just the name. Hermopolis was believed to be built on the primordial mound, the first point of order that emerged from the churning waters of Nile, fundamental forces that existed before creation itself: water, darkness, time, and limitless potential.
Okay, water, darkness, time, and unlimited potential. This is again the 8 before the creation of the Big Bang or whatever, the simulation.
Each pair embodied a form of duality: Nun and Naunet, the formless and the potential; He and Hehet, the endless and the boundless; Kek and Keket, the absolute and the unknown; Amun and Amonet, the hidden and the spark. The Ogdoad, in their enigmatic nature, transcended the concept of individual deities. They were the embodiment of the primal chaos, a state where potential and limitation, vastness and form, all existed in a delicate balance. It was from this dance of opposites that creation itself was born. Imagine a vast, featureless expanse of water, a swirling primeval chaos known as Nun. This primordial state held infinite potential, personified by Naunet. They were the first of the Ogdoad pairs. Nun and Naunet weren't just water and possibility. They were the embodiment of the unknown, the fertile ground from which all existence could arise. He and Hehet followed, representing endless time and boundless space. He wasn't simply a clock counting down the ages, but the very concept of time before time as we know it existed. Hehet wasn't just empty space, but the limitless expanse that preceded the formation of the universe. Imagine a vast canvas waiting for the first brushstroke. Kek and Keket embodied the absolute darkness that shrouded the primordial state, a darkness unlike any we experience in the night. It was the absence of light, the unknown that defied human imagination. Finally, there was Amun and Amonet. Amun wasn't just a god waiting to be born. He was the hidden potential for life itself, the spark waiting to ignite within the formless abyss. Amonet personified the unseen force, the feminine principle that would eventually ignite creation and give rise to all existence. These Ogdoad pairs represented the duality that existed within the primeval chaos, the formless and the potential, the endless and the spark of beginning. The Ogdoad played a central role in Egyptian creation myths. Their interaction, often depicted as a churning or a chaotic dance within the primeval waters of Nun, was believed to be the catalyst for creation itself. It wasn't a singular, dramatic event, but a cyclical dance of opposing forces, a dynamic interplay between Nun and Naunet's potential, He and Hehet's vastness, Kek and Keket's darkness, and Amun and Amonet's spark of life. This dance gave birth to the universe, a birthing process that mirrored the annual Nile flood, a life-giving force that Egyptians saw as a reflection of the primeval waters. From this churning emerged a primordial mound, a symbolic landmass representing the first point of order within the chaos. This mound became the foundation stone upon which creation unfolded. Another creation myth associated with the Ogdoad is the Ogdoadic egg. Here, creation emerged from a cosmic egg fertilized by the Ogdoads mingling, highlighting the cyclical nature of birth and rebirth, a constant reminder that creation is an ongoing process. While later deities like Ra, the sun god, were seen as children of creation, emerging from the primordial mound bathed in the light of a newly formed sun, the Ogdoad remained the unseen forces, the silent guardians who set the stage. The annual Nile flood, a life-giving force that sustained Egypt, mirrored the primeval waters of Nun, a connection that emphasized the cyclical nature of creation and renewal. The Ogdoad's concept of duality and opposing forces influenced other aspects of Egyptian religion. The interplay of Ma'at, cosmic order, and Isfet, chaos, or the importance of balance in maintaining the world's harmony all stem from this foundational principle. Even the contrasting roles of Osiris, the god of the underworld and death, and Isis, the goddess of life and rebirth, can be seen as echoes of the Ogdoad's duality. The Ogdoad occupy a unique position in the Egyptian pantheon. Unlike the readily recognizable gods who walked among mortals or were depicted in grand statues, they remained as unseen forces, the silent guardians who birthed the universe from the importance of recognizing.
Okay, how awesome is that, and how underrated, and how often do you not hear about that, right? Because like by the time you hear about most people talking about religion or pantheon, they've already moved past, like they've not even like spoken about this. So this is something that if you understand early on, it's just like gonna work wonders. Okay, let's see what else we have. For each one of them, I basically have 3 videos just so that we get a well-rounded understanding of it.
Ever heard of the Ogdoad? This ancient Egyptian concept holds secrets about the very creation of the universe. The Ogdoad consists of 8 primordial deities, 4 male and 4 female. The names have the same meanings and differ only by their endings. Nu and Nonet, Hehu and Hehut, Kukui and Kukuit, Ker and Kerhet, representing the chaotic forces before the world began. But what did these gods symbolize? Water, darkness, infinity, and the unseen were their domains, each pair balancing the cosmos. This ancient wisdom might just change how we view early cosmology. Rediscovering the Ogdoad isn't just about gods and myths. It's about understanding how the Egyptians viewed existence and order. Did they tap into secrets we've forgotten? Unlocking the mystery of the Ogdoad could rewrite what we know about ancient philosophies and the birth of the universe.
The Ennead, or Great Ennead is a group of 9 deities in Egyptian mythology worshipped at Heliopolis, the city of the sun in ancient Egypt. The sun god Adam, the primordial god from whom all else arose, his children Shu, god of peace, lions, air, and wind, and Tefnut, goddess of moisture, moist air, dew and rain. Their children Geb, god of earth, and Nut, goddess of the sky, stars, cosmos, mothers, astronomy, and the universe. Their children Osiris, the
Sorry, of course, no sound again. I'll try to catch that earlier. So yeah, I was saying that the 8, first there's the 8, that's the primordial energies, and then there's the 9 that came from the 8. So here we go with the 8 and 9 again, which is interesting. I hadn't seen that before, but now that I'm like, whoa. So as you're writing, a lot of this is gonna be like organic coincidences too. Am I still muted? I think I'm okay now. But yeah. Cool. Sweet. Okay, so next would be I hope that I hope this is still working. Okay, I'm good now. Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay, so the pyramid texts, briefly going to go through them. Some of these can be really tedious and dry. A lot of them are kind of morbid, so yeah.
Welcome to Egyptology 101. On this channel, we discuss a wide variety of topics relating to the ancient Egyptian world, including art, architecture, religion, history, and much more. This corpus most likely evolved from an oral tradition, and it consists of around 900 individual spells. The ancient Egyptians believed in life after death, and the pyramid text spells were meant to provide knowledge and be of service to the deceased individual during their afterlife journey. It dates to the end of the 5th dynasty, or although there are around 9 per photo, the spells run from top to bottom, and they read from right to left. These spells can vary in length. For example, some spells are very short and only include a few lines of text, while others can cover significant portions of a wall. Even if
So oh gosh, what's that? What are those detective movies like the Da Vinci Code? Cause there's got to be angels and demons, but what else? National Treasure. National Treasure. There's always this like detective work that's going on. This is like a clue you can build, like Glass Onion, Knives Out. If you've seen the Knives Out series, there's always like some form of like hidden information that the protagonists are trying. If you like love to study this stuff, you're gonna pick those clues up naturally. Like here, you can pick up the clue that you can write poems or verses and put them in temples. And then you could have your characters go and be like, oh, what's written there? So you know what I mean. That's also where you can get cryptography and information, like, or if you're making the next Harry Potter, here you go. This is how spells were written in the past. Like the spells were carved into the stone. So I don't know. That's something that I would include in mine, for example. So, yeah, pyramid texts, again, they were written, that's how they found them, and they talk about soul and mortality. They also talk about the gods that protect the soul, right? So many ads. I think we get this Egyptian stuff. Let's move on to the Enuma Elish. So after you get the Sumerians, you get the Babylonians. Everyone's heard of Babylon, the Tower of Babylon. The Babylonian because they basically conquered that area of Sumeria. They basically stole the Sumerian gods and just added their own. So yeah, here's some information about the Babylonian religion.
Example of something coming from near nothing is the Enuma Elish, the Babylonian story of creation. The phrase means "went on high" and is taken from the first line of the epic. The time in which it was written is unclear. Dates range from around the time of Hammurabi to the late 2nd millennium BC. This epic details the events of the creation of the world, and how the god Marduk became the ruler of the cosmos, and how the city of Babylon came to be. In the beginning, there existed only 2 oceans, Apsu, the god and ocean of fresh water, and Tiamat, the goddess and ocean of salt water. Their waters...
See, here we go again. They literally stole this. We just went over this, right? So it's like, oh, by the time it came to Babylon, there's like, not so many, but the Sumerian Egyptian had already existed. So Babylon mythos is like, okay, well, let me get that idea and I'll just slap my own names on it. That's, yeah, 7 times speed. I wish. It's on 2 because I have a self-inscribed like impatience with YouTube videos.
Mingled together and created the gods Lamu and Lahamu. These 2 then made Anshar and Kishar. From the latter pair then came Anu and Ea. Ea was a god of the earth and water. He was described as a cunning and resourceful deity that existed.
So it's basically the same thing over again. What I think is interesting about the Babylons is they have the story of Atrahasis, which is the Great Flood that we all know is also in the Old Testament in Genesis. So again, they would have borrowed heavily from Sumerian and Babylonian texts to talk about the Great Flood. But it's the same thing. It's literally the same story of like they're about to wipe out the land, and so he sends the great flood and asks their survivors, right? So this is how basically the story of the flood and Noah was built upon the Atrahasis or the flood myth.
The seas, and Enlil ruled the earth. The greater gods burdened the lesser gods with laborious tasks. They were forced to do heavy, burdensome labor. The lesser gods were forced to dig the Tigris River and the Euphrates. They were ordered to heap up the mountains. Fed up with their work, the lesser gods set fire to their tools and demanded to see their foreman, Enlil. At night, they surrounded Enlil's temple. The mob was halted by the gatekeeper, who asked, "Who declared war? Who has brought battle to Enlil?" The lower gods explained the pains of their burdensome labor. They sought reckoning with Enlil. The greater gods discussed the matter, and a solution was proposed. The mother goddess would create humans in order to carry the burden of labor, freeing the lesser gods from their pain. The gods agreed, and Enki made a plan. But in order to make humans, one of the gods must be sacrificed. Wei Ilu offered himself. His blood was mixed with clay, and after spitting on the clay, the job was done. The mother goddess formed humans out of the clay. And now, the humans would be burdened with the labor of the gods. At first, the gods enjoyed their new leisure, but as time passed and the population increased, the humans grew large in number and became too noisy, greatly disturbing the gods. The racket disturbed Enlil so that he could not sleep. So to stop the noise, he sent a drought to decimate the human population. And it didn't work. The humans repopulated and the commotion continued. Frustrated by the continuing noise, Enlil sent a famine to kill the humans, and it didn't work. The humans repopulated and began construction of the great vessel. He would take his family with him, as well as many animals. Once on board, he sealed. When the storm finally subsided, the humans had all been wiped out. But the gods became hungry. There were no humans to offer them sacrifices. The two made a pact to stop the humans becoming too noisy again. They agreed to limit their number. They introduced death for all humans. They introduced infant mortality and made a third of women infertile. They also created priests and priestesses who would be celibate their whole lives. As for Atrahasis, no one knows. The story ends there, but some believe that he was carried away to paradise to live away from the new humans, and thus
so many Christians do not know this, and it's so ignorant and so politically incorrect to not know that the story of the Old Testament is heavily borrowed and lent from the Sumerian Tablets, the Egyptian pyramid texts, and the Babylonian Atrahasis and Enuma Elish. So now you know how ancient these stories are and how like every religion just seems to change it up their own way. And that's why you're allowed to do the same thing. When you world build, you could do whatever you want, but as long as you've figured out what like others have done before you. The Epic of Gilgamesh is a story that was really interesting. I put it in my shorts. I was basically like, I am reading all these books, and then I realized like one of the oldest novels is the Epic of Gilgamesh, but it's one of those where it's a fiction novel, but it's about the gods, and it's about soul immortality, and so it's kind of like very involved, but this is the last of the Babylonian that we'll cover it.
Many ages ago, to be idolized by the people, and ordering the construction of monuments in his honor, and he seduced any woman in a portion of clay, the god away his purity granted by the god.
Okay, so what this is about, it's a king, it's fictional, and but God creates an equal to him, and made out of clay, and then they fight, but they become friends, and then they go to the world's end to basically fight the gatekeeper of like heaven and earth, and then he tries to figure out the elixir of immortality, and when he tries to get it, he basically dies. But it's God's in it, so the god, he like talks to the gods. There are like Inanna is one of the gods that he talks to. So if you're like interested in kind of like how gods were portrayed and how you can fictionalize gods, because these novels had done it and it's public domain to use these gods, you can kind of like see, oh, okay, so like in the Epic of Gilgamesh, this is how they used the goddess Inanna to, you know, tell this, weave the story in. So if you're interested in using any of these gods, take the Epic of Gilgamesh as a reference material of how to do that. The Vedas, so this is when I started to get really complicated was when I just tried understanding the Vedas. I still don't. This is why I'm doing this stream to get more information through these videos.
Veda Bhumi, the land of knowledge, was one of the names of India, and for a very good reason. If we turn the hidden pages of the history, long before the Islamic invasions and the European colonization, India has been the advanced Indian education system at that time was till today. Now let's see what they are. For ease of understanding, we have put it this way. There are 6 broad categories of Indian scriptures which hold the entire knowledge system. They are Shruti, Smriti, Purana, Itihasam, Agamam, Siddhantam. And they cover a diverse set of fields of education like mathematics, physics, biology, philosophy, astronomy, health sciences, linguistics, and many other branches of science and technology besides the theological concepts. Starting with the first one, Shruti. Shruti is well known as the Vedas, and there are 4 of them. Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sama Veda, and Atharvana Veda. Rig means praise, a form of expressing the gratitude. It explains about the various hymns praising the elements of nature and cosmos. And the second one is Yajur Veda. Yajur means worship. It explains about different procedures of worship of the nature and cosmos. And the third one is Sama Veda. Sama means song. It gives a music-driven.
So these are the Vedas, and he's explaining that there's different sections of the Vedas, and he's going through them one by one. But these 2 are probably what you're going to need because the cosmos, so anything about the creationism we probably find there.
Canonical format to the other Vedas for ease of recitation. The fourth one is Atharvana Veda. Atharva means stable mind. It's kind of word of it unless you are blessed with a guru who can explain to you details. The 4 internal Upanishads, supported by 6 external blocks. Siksha, Vyakarana, Chandas, Nirukta, Jyotisha, and Kalpa. We'll keep it very simple, not going to further details. The 4 internal blocks of Aranika, Brahmana, Samhita, and Upanishads, they describe the theosophical, philosophical, and physiological anatomy of the cosmos and the study of rituals. All these 6 are called as Vedangas. And that's how the 4 Vedas are supported by the 6 Vedangas. And that is not all. Each of the 4 Vedas have 4 Upavedas as an offspring. Ayurveda, the study of life sciences, ascribing to Rig Veda. Gandharva Veda, study of music, art, and dance, ascribing to Sama Veda. Dhanur Veda, study of archery and warfare, ascribing to Yajur Veda. And Arthashastra, study of business administration and political sciences, ascribing to Atharvana Veda. Now this is the complete picture of what we call today in simple words as Vedas. And one of our prime objectives of this channel, Project Shivoham, is to bring forward this entire knowledge system in a simple format that everybody can understand. We already did a couple of documentaries on Dhanurvedam, Ayurvedam, Sanskrit, and a lot more. Samavarta, Katyayana, Brihaspati, Parashara, Vyasa, Shankha, Likit, Hetu. Itihasas are the one which shaped up the ethos principles, trigonometry.
Okay, that's all you really need to understand. That, you know, you gotta be careful when you talk about like the Vedas because it's so plural, and you can see there's so much that you can delve into.
Hindu mythology is one of the oldest and richest mythologies in the world. It has influenced many other mythologies and religions that came after it. Hindus worship many gods and goddesses. According to ancient Indian literature, there are millions of gods of the universe. But of course, we do not have time enough to learn about all of them. However, in this video, we can learn about some of them. Some of the most important deities in Hinduism. Let's get started. Brahma. In Hinduism, Brahma is one of the 3 supreme deities. He is said to be the god of creation. In many descriptions, paintings, and statues, Brahma is often depicted as an old man with a white beard and having 3 or sometimes 4 heads. Vishnu. Vishnu is the second god in the Hindu trinity. If Brahma is the creator, then Vishnu is the preserver. He is the god of preservation and maintains and manages the continuity of the universe. He is often depicted as a man with blue skin and 4 arms.
Do you see the Freemason logo here? That's interesting. Yeah, one second.
Shiva. Shiva is the last god in the Hindu trinity. If Brahma is the creator, Vishnu is the preserver, then Shiva is the destroyer. As the god of destruction, his role is to destroy the universe in order to recreate it, paving the way for beneficial change. He is often considered the most powerful god in the Hindu pantheon. Those are the 3 supreme gods in Hinduism. They are known as the Trimurti. Now let's look at the normal gods and goddesses. Saraswati. Saraswati is the goddess of knowledge, music, and art. Brahma, Hinduism. He is the personification of held specifically on, known to awaken carnal desires. Brahmari. Brahmariyaman. Ariyaman.
Okay, they have an extensive list. Fascinating, so stunning, honestly. Too complicated. All right. I want to go and talk about the Upanishads really quick.
Of the available 108 Upanishads displays serious wisdom that could be imparted only to the worthy who is conditioned.
End of each of the 4 Vedas.
Oh, my friend sent, so I mentioned her channel, right? This is scriptures, in her playlist. So, why did I feel like I needed to go through this one? I felt like when I was reading it, let me find that book again. The document. So if I go into here, okay, so spiritual treatise. Oh, right. So it talks about the Brahman extensively as the ultimate deity. Right. So the Upanishads talk mostly about this Brahman spirit supreme. So if you're creating a character that's similar to Brahman, the Upanishads is something that you would look at. So certain segments of this, so like the Mahabharata talks about Vishnu, Krishna, Shiva, Durga, Indra. So certain parts of the Hindu mythology, certain different textbooks are going to talk about different things. That's what you need to know. So basically don't try to like read them all. If there's anything, certainly if you're like going to major in it, obviously, but if you're just trying to draw certain references, yeah, don't feel overwhelmed. Just pick the certain books where the certain characters you want to talk about exist in that book. Okay, the Zoroastrian Avesta was something I almost didn't look into, and I think it really helps me understand this concept of duality. So let's look at it.
This video is brought to you by Tab for Citizen, Blongy Mystery have in common. Browser extension Freddie Mercury and Ireland's richest citizen, Blongy Mystery, have in common. All of them are Zoroastrians, the ancient religion of Iran. This is one of the oldest ongoing religions and altered the course of human history by influencing Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and Greek philosophy. But today it only has a fraction of the millions of followers it once had. So what is Zoroastrianism? What do Zoroastrians believe? And where do others fit into all of this? Well, let's find out. Zoroastrianism was born in ancient Iran at least 3,500 years ago. It all began around 1,500 BCE, give or take a few centuries, with the prophet Zarathustra, or Zoroaster, as the ancient Greeks called him, and so English speakers do too. While we call the religion Zoroastrianism, actual Zoroastrians tend to call it Mazdayazna, meaning worshipper of Mazda. No, not that Mazda, but it actually was named after the Mazda that I'm going to explain shortly. Zoroastrianism was the chief religion of Iran for around 1,000 years. Between the 6th century BCE and the 10th century CE, it was the state religion of three huge Iranian empires. The Achaemenid Empire of 300 fame, along with the Parthian and Sasanian empires. Back then, the priests of Zoroastrianism were known as magi. The ancient Greeks thought these magi had secret magical knowledge since they understood complex astronomy. This led to the English words magic, mage, and magician. The magi would even show up in the Bible. According to the Gospel of Matthew, 3 Zoroastrian magi came to visit the baby Jesus. These 3 wise men, as they are known in English, are still celebrated by Christians around the world on January 6th. Eventually, the Sasanian Empire would fall to the Muslim Arabs during their invasion of Iran in the 7th century CE, which started the decline and persecution of Zoroastrians in Iran. Following this, in the 10th century, some Iranian Zoroastrians fled to India, forming the Parsi community, named after where they came from, which the Indians called Persia. This once refugee community now emigrate from to the UK. In the last 100 years, small Zoroastrian populations have moved to the UK, US, Australia, and Canada. Today, there are about 200,000 Zoroastrians left, a region of Iran, and that he was outraged by his society. 1. Ahura Mazda and Angra Mainyu. Zoro proof of how.
Okay. Yeah, it's actually, so honestly, like, it's from Iran, but honestly, it's like one of, I really enjoyed learning about Zoroastrian. I think it's stunning, it's beautiful, and this is why. It's about duality, and it kind of like makes sense as we watch why it's so interesting.
Light and goodness, Ahura Mazda, who revealed that they were the one true God. The truth of how the universe worked was revealed to Zoroaster, and he knew that it was now his divine mission to spread this truth to his fellow humans. So, what are the core beliefs of Zoroastrianism? Well, 1. Ahura Mazda and Angra Mainyu. Zoroastrians worship one uncreated, eternal god known as Ahura Mazda, which means wise lord. Zoroaster describes Ahura Mazda as the lord of order, something completely good, loving, infinitely wise, and the creator of the world and all good things. Ahura Mazda is supported by 6 holy immortals known as the Amesha. These 6 holy immortals are normally compared to archangels in Christianity, if that helps you kind of figure out what their position is. Sometimes there is a 7th Spenta called Spent Manu, but maybe he's also the Holy Spirit of Ahura Mazda? Sometimes Ahura Mazda also has a parent called Zurvan, who is time itself, but that's considered heresy at this point. Look, we don't have a lot of time to get into it. Honestly, it's a very old religion. There have been many different interpretations over the last 3,000 years. I'm really just simplifying and providing the most commonly accepted current beliefs. So keep that in mind, and as always, there's more information in the description. Opposed to Ahura Mazda is Angra Mainyu, the destructive spirit, and his evil minions known as Devas. Angra Mainyu is the complete polar opposite of Ahura Mazda. He is darkness, deceit, death, and decay. He is a corrupting parasite seeking to destroy Ahura Mazda's creation and is responsible for all negative things in the world. Ahura Mazda is light, Angra Mainyu is darkness. Ahura Mazda is the creator, Angra Mainyu the destroyer. Ahura Mazda created light, fire, compact Japanese vehicles, joy, humanity, puppies probably. Angra Mainyu gave the world disease, rust, mold, darkness, and that little piece of skin that pops up around your fingernail that hurts so much. Why, Angra Mainyu? Why? Zoroastrians think everything is a battle between these two opposites. Ahura Mazda represents the truth, Angra Mainyu the lie. For humans, life is a constant choice between the truth and the lie, which may be difficult because Angra Mainyu can be very deceiving. Before time began, Ahura Mazda and Angra Mainyu were separated by an infinite void. They respectively lived in infinite light and infinite darkness. Then Ahura Mazda created the physical, or Getig world. Angra Mainyu crawled into this new world and polluted it. They made the ocean salty, they turned the good earth into desert, killed the first human, made plants wither, and polluted fire with smoke. We now live in a time Zoroastrians refer to as the Gumezishin, or the mixture. Good and evil, truth and the lie both exist together in our world. But Angra Mainyu's presence is temporary. They are a stain on the world rather than a permanent fixture. Zoroastrians see the physical world as a trap that Ahura Mazda lured Angra Mainyu into. Now trapped in the physical world, Angra Mainyu can be defeated slowly by the good thoughts, good words, and good deeds of humans working with Ahura Mazda. 2. Heaven and Hell. Zoroastrians believe that when a person dies, their soul leaves their body. Their soul is then led to the bridge of judgment. Above this bridge lies heaven, below hell. Here the soul's good and bad deeds are weighed on a scale. Depending on the balance of good to evil deeds, the soul ascends to heaven, a paradise of infinite bliss called the abode of song, or falls down to hell to suffer, quote, long age of misery, darkness, bad food, and the crying of woe. This is called England. This is called Duzak. There is also a medium place for people who are neither good nor evil, where they kind of just float and experience nothing. Servants, as well as masters, can reach paradise. People will be judged according to how they chose to live their lives, rather than wealth or prestige. For Zoroastrians, death represents the highest form of pollution. Death only exists because of Angra Mainyu. Upon the death of a Zoroastrian, a priest will be called to perform a ceremony, after which the soul of the person will no longer be considered connected to the body. The family then says deceased and redeemed, and everyone will live together in eternal life. Good deeds, such as taking Zoroaster, roughly 3 Zoroastrians really couldn't world history.
Lord of Light is
or earth into desert, many different, and the creator of the world. It's a very old religion. There have been many.
Okay, so this is something that like really opened my eyes to understanding that there's something that explains good and evil into a much more easier way to understand it than how in my opinion Christian like Lucifer versus it's similar but I feel like the Zoroastrian make it a bit easier to follow, but yeah, it's also this like I feel like Gnosticism probably took a lot from Zoroastrianism, and that's why I kind of like vibe with it. But yeah, it's very cool, and it's one of those like hidden kind of Easter eggs that you can include if you know about Zoroastrian religion. Can really write a lot of interesting elements. Okay, let's go to Canaan. Canaanite religion.
He was unaware that he translated.
Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, and in this video I would like to share with you the Baal cycle. Now before I will start, I want to share what came from the ancient cities with two by land and by sea relations, from more immediate practical use as of a pair whose name is messengers of Yam, known.
Are you?
Some videos bore me, so I can't deal.
Welcome back. I'm Zach to another awesome episode, and boy, do I have a deep dive of a study for y'all today. And seeking for answers from y'all's comments, I've nearly conclusively proven, biblically proven, through the Bible, that Nephilim entities survived the flood in one way or another. Yes, not just through the bloodline of Ham, aka Ham's wife, but through some other means. Walking, talking Nephilim/Rephaim survivors. Here on my AI video that defined our title as. So check it out. I got what the text we're going to be looking at is KTU, which is 4 and 4, basically Ugaritic Texts found in ancient Ugarit, right north of Israel, and it's.
Sorry, so I finally found this video. Okay, so Ugarit is this is the land of Canaan. If you don't know, this is the Gaza Strip. This is Jerusalem somewhere over here. Babylon's over there. But this is the strip that the Old Testament talks about, you know, the Exodus from Egypt and the Abraham settling in the Canaanites, so the Hebrews throughout the Canaan. So what we're looking at is some texts that were found in ancient Ugarit, which is right here, which is a city right in Canaan, in that holy area, and that, yeah.
It's KTU 1.108, defined our title as an intercessory prayer to Rapiu and other deities. And we're starting with Rapiu first because I think that immediately it will tie us into Og, the focus of this episode, quick, fast, and with tons of evidence. So let's check that out. And we'll start with the text on the right side, and that's going to be from the book Religious Texts from Ugarit. Okay, and we'll start off verse 1. May Rapiu, king of eternity, drink wine. Yeah, may he drink the powerful and noble God, the God enthroned in Atharat, or Asheroth, the God who rules in Adrai. So we'll see down here, identified in green. I won't get in that today, but Rapiu, I forgot the word for healer. A guy put forward a great theory, it being because the healing took place is when they basically mummified these bodies. So Rapiu is going to be the king of the living. Rephaim are going to be dead spirits. It's also a bloodline, but we'll get into that, right? And they're calling him the eternal one. And I'm pulling those things out because now we're going to look at the Bible, because this should be popping out to you. The God who rules in Adrai, the God who rules in Asheroth. And as you look on the left, it says, behold, the Rapha king, eternal. He imbibes, the God drinks. Always wanting to build, he's tired of building things out of brick. Remember, these people are in Mesopotamia. God who ties in once again, ashes a bunch of destruction of Tyre.
Oh my god, it's so difficult. What is he trying to say?
They're going to pick her, and then survive the flood, it seems like. So let's go to our next clue. Now let's go over here to KTU, kingdoms who are extremely strong, how they follow other sources descend to the netherworld. To the netherworld descend, go down low into the earth. Below is this Rephaim, Sidon Uradan. Below is TR Elemental, the other Rephaim. Below are the most ancient Rephaim. Below is Amish Tamru, the king, Nikmadu, the king. And so they do separate between dead kings and dead Rephaim. So once again, when we start to talk about, you know, is Og a survivor of the flood? A Rephaim is a Rephaim, you know, and a human is a human. And this separates it.
I don't know why this guy's going on about Rephaim, because a lot of this, I just pulled up the Ugaritic texts. I hate when things don't make sense. So I'm like trying to figure it out. So this is the cuneiform. I guess it's probably really difficult to read. I'm borrowing it right now. Oh, right, yeah. This is one of those texts that was like, when you look it up, it's actually in cuneiform still. But this is the Baal right there, Baal cycle. I kind of want to see if there was something that we can pull from this, because Canaanite motifs permeate the Bible. Most significant is this fusion of Baal language, and Baal appears in the Bible. So it talks about Baal, like Yahweh, was a victorious warrior. Like Baal, Yahweh revealed himself on a mountain. Like Baal, Yahweh had a temple built. So it seems like a lot of like the ancient like Yahweh is obviously referring to the Hebrew Old Testament God. So it seems like the Old Testament borrowed a lot from like Baal as well. So yeah, like when we hear like the Balenciaga scandal, this Canaanite struggle of like the Holy Land, a lot of that is down to like there is all this ancient Canaanite religious texts that, you know, the Canaan gods, El, the chief god, Baal. So while it's not as old as Egyptian or Sumerian, it's still quite old, and it's the oldest religion relatively to that area of the sacred land. The Tanakh. So now we have the Tanakh, right? So as you can see, so from the Ugaritic Texts of Canaan, just 100 years after the Ugaritic Texts, where we just got the Baal cycle, then we have the Jewish Holy Bible, the Tanakh. Why? Because again, Exodus was happening around that area, so that Old Testament story of Abraham, they basically wiped out the Canaans, and so they wrote the Tanakh. And Yahweh again. So I guess what I'm trying to say, if you're incorporating anything about Yahweh, the Old Testament, just know that they're basically their direct ancestors in that area was the Canaans, and so you have to kind of do more research about that. The Tanakh is the Old Testament.
The book, the Jewish Bible, the Tanakh.
The Tanakh.
No book has had a greater impact on human history, on human civilization. No book has been more devoutly read, more diligently studied, more deeply probed. What's in the Tanakh? Who wrote it, or transcribed it, and when? Join us for a journey that spans thousands of years, a journey traversed by shepherds and kings, prophets and prophetesses, scribes and seers, as we explore the 24 books, the 929 chapters, and the 22,864 verses that comprise the Jewish Bible. The Tanakh consists of 3 components: Torah, Nevi'im, or prophets, and Ketuvim, or writings. The first section, Torah, is the most fundamental text of Judaism, transcribed by Moses during the 40 years that the people of Israel were traveling through the wilderness. This is the text inscribed in the Torah scroll, the most sacred object in Judaism. The Torah consists of 5 books, the 5 books of Moses, also called the Chumash. The Torah recounts the origins of the Jewish people, but even more importantly, it contains the 613 mitzvot, divine commandments, that define our mission in life and the covenant between God and the people. Leah, Joseph and his brothers, lives and deeds of the prophet.
Okay, so you get the point. Everyone's probably opened up that Bible.
The very first parsha of the Torah is Bereshit, usually translated as "in the beginning." It's our and they see that they are naked.
So this is obviously now it's the story that we know of the first Adam and Eve and all that. So I think this will kind of explain the differences.
Judaism, Christianity, and Islam are 3 Abrahamic religions that share certain similarities and differences. Judaism, which originated around 2000 BC, is the oldest, followed by Christianity in 26 AD and Islam in 610 AD. These 3 Abrahamic religions share a common historical and spiritual foundation, with each branching out into distinct beliefs, practices, and traditions over time. The god worshipped in Judaism is Elohim, a single, all-powerful, and transcendent being. In Christianity, Jesus is the central figure of worship, believed to be the Son of God and the Savior of humanity. In Islam, Allah is the one and only God, whose message was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad. Important figures in each religion who are not worshipped include Moses in Judaism, who led the Israelites out of Egypt and received the 10 Commandments from God, St. Paul in Christianity, who was a major contributor to the New Testament and spread Christianity throughout the Roman Empire, and Muhammad in Islam, the last prophet who conveyed Allah's message to humanity through the Quran. The architecture, rituals, and services in each place of worship. In Judaism, Amidah is a blessing, spiritual significance for the faithful, and attract millions of pilgrims described as a peaceful place amongst the clouds. In Christianity, the Promised Land is heaven, often portrayed as a kingdom above the sky. In Islam, the Promised Land is Jannah, a beautiful agent of God, responsible for testing humans. In Christianity, the devil is commonly portrayed as a fallen angel. In Islam, Shaitan represents a rebellious figure, acting against God's will. The concept of a false prophet or deceiver exists in all 3 religions. In Judaism, the false prophet is Mashiach Sheker, who falsely claims to be the Messiah. In Christianity, the Antichrist is a figure of evil opposing Christ at the end times. In Islam, the Dajjal is an evil being causing chaos and deceiving many before being defeated by the true Messiah, Jesus. Each religion emphasizes specific deeds and virtues. In Judaism, the greatest deed is sins are also viewed differently in Shir 330 AD to 1453 AD. In Judaism, Sarah, the wife of Abraham, is highly regarded. In Christianity, Mary, the mother of Jesus, is venerated.
Of course, I'm muted again. Okay, so as you guys know, this Jewish Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism has the Sefer Yetzirah, and this is a bit about that. It seems like it's just an animation. Wow, that was interesting.
How did Kabbalah begin? At the center of Kabbalah, and by that I mean an ancient mystic stream of Judaism, not this place in LA, at the center of Kabbalah is a book called the Zohar, which is a book that collects knowledge from even older Jewish mystical works. It looks at verses in the Bible and ideas in Judaism through the lens of the 10 Sefirot. Put simply, each of these Sefirot is a way to interact with an aspect of God. Through these Sefirot, the Zohar created new ways to think about lots of the Bible and really to think about Judaism in general, mystical ways. Now, the Zohar was written in the 13th century in a culture where there was both intellectual curiosity and deep religious fervor. In this culture, this was in northern Spain, on one hand, they were...
So there's the Zohar and the Sefer Yetzirah. So I guess it seems like the Zohar says a lot about Kabbalah. So
after that, Freud, and it's up to us.
The Kabbalah is really complicated. It's its own like entire like study. I would have to do a stream literally just about Kabbalah because it's so complicated. But this is, looks like this is what you would collect if you're collecting the Zohar. Several of them.
By a man who made it itself and allowed the soul to come to a full expression, which is unbelievable stuff.
Okay. The Book of Changes.
Hello everyone, my name is Yan. Welcome to my brand new YouTube channel. It has no particular author, but the content of the I Ching has been added and developed by many other great Chinese people. One of those, as you all know, Confucius. Now, about 10,000 years ago, one of the Chinese legend and mythology figures, Fu Xi, created the very original symbol of the I Ching. Fu Xi thought the beginning of the universe was completely boundless, stillness, and empty until two energy, or qi, comes into existence. Now, you probably guess what they are. Yes, it's yin and the yang. He then drew a broken line to represent yin and a solid line to represent yang. Everything on Earth, including Earth itself, was created by these two energies. Now, by stacking these lines up, he discovered 8 fundamental natural phenomena on Earth, which are fire, water, wind, thunder, river, mountain, earth, and heaven. Putting them all together becomes a trigram, which you probably see somewhere in your life. Now, at this point, you might be wondering why he was doing all these things. Well, of course, the main reason is for divination. But it was not for his own personal use. It was for everyone. It was for predicting the weather and locating the new area. Now, they were so important for us at that time because the language hasn't been invented and we knew nothing about our surroundings. Being able to forecast the weather and to know where we are anytime gave us a sense of control. Now, when the meaning of human...
So I Ching really hones in on the yin and the yang, as he just said. Okay, Theogony is where it gets interesting.
So you want to know how it all started? The terrible titans, the 12 gods, and their kingdoms? Well, for many years, there was only emptiness in the world. And suddenly, boom, chaos appeared. Well, it was not to be the beginning. From chaos were born the 3 basic powers of the world. The vast earth, which became the home of all the immortals. Eros, which arouses the intense desire in the hearts of gods and men. And Tartarus, which determines the past, present, and future. But for now, let's talk about the earth. Earth, or Gaia, made many children, some with chaos. Yes, you heard right, it was chaos who gave birth to it. Of course, some did it on their own. The children she gave birth to alone were the starry Uranus, which constantly surrounds and protects her. The high mountains that offer refuge to the nymphs. And the deep Pontus, with the endless seas that rain upon its shores. And even though Uranus was her son, she bore him 6 children. The 3 Cyclops, fearless, giant monsters, and the 300 hands, giants with supernatural powers, with 100 hands and 50 heads. Of course, their father should not have imprisoned them in Tartarus, but he was afraid that at some point they would rise up and take over from him. Nice dad, huh? Heaven and Earth had 12 more immortal children, the Titans. Okay, Uranus must have liked them because he did not imprison them anywhere. And of all the Titans, Cronus and Rhea gave birth to the 6 original human gods: Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, and finally Zeus. Cronus was as scared as his father. Coincidence? That one day, one of his children would take his throne. So, with the birth of each child, he immediately swallowed it. And so Rhea lost all her children, all except for the last one, Zeus. And she was determined to save him at all costs. With the help of her mother, Earth, you didn't forget about her, did you? Hid the newborn Zeus in a cave in Crete. They wrapped a stone in cloth and presented it to Cronus as the newborn Zeus. And guess what happened to that stone? Cronus ruled for a few more years, unworried, because he had done away with all his challengers. But Zeus, big and strong, appeared out of nowhere and rebelled against him. The Titans. After 10 whole years, the gods managed to defeat them, but only after the 100-handed launched huge rocks that crushed the Titans. And where do you think the Titans were imprisoned? Where else? Tartarus, of course. After this victory, the 6 gods had to find a way to live peacefully with each other, and decided to divide the powers of the world between the 3 men. Hades took the kingdom of the underworld, Poseidon the kingdom of the sea, and Zeus, the smallest but also the bravest of all, took the kingdom of earth and sky. He lived on Olympus and became the father and leader of all mortals and immortals, with the promise that from now on he would bring peace and harmony to the world. And he did it, don't you think? Well,
and conceived 2 children, Ether and Hemera. We're going to have to accept the limited gene pool.
Okay, so very similar stuff to that what we've been looking at, because obviously now it's just so like theogony only came about so like down the line. Like, see how many others came before it. Theogony 700 BC. That's when we get the Greek Pantheon. So it's quite late in the game. But yeah, it what's beautiful about what they've done is like you could really copy their template of the gods, because they basically like have so many god personifications that you can copy. The Iliad and the Odyssey, I think we'll talk about them in the fiction novel a bit more. And the fiction novel stream, the Orphic hymns. This is like the cult of the Orpheus. He was like a magician. A musician.
In this episode, before diving into the
so yeah, there's even like the myth of Orpheus. Tao Te Ching, again, the Tao is like the void.
Today we look at the Tao Te Ching, a 2,000-year-old text which played an important part in founding the Taoist religion and was supposedly written by one of the most famous Eastern mystics, Lao Tzu. Hi, this is Darren with Philosophize Now. So let's start with finding out what is the Tao. The Tao is a force which is responsible for creating the universe and all the creatures within it, as well as being responsible for sustaining and shaping it. But the term force is not entirely correct, as the first line of the text shows us an important characteristic of the Tao. The way that can be spoken of is not the constant way. The name that can be named is not the constant name. And what this means is that all language is inadequate in describing the Tao, as this would place limitations on the Tao, and the Tao cannot be limited. And there are many other such examples which show us the inadequacies of language. And this is things such as describing emotions or the process of thinking. And if I asked you to describe what love is to a person who had never experienced it, I think that you would find it quite difficult to describe this. But the writers of the Tao knew that they needed some way of describing the concept to the reader. And so throughout the book, they tried to use what we call the lesser term or the negative.
Basically, to me, the Tao is very similar to the void. I don't know why they don't really like use that analogy more, because it's like what I find so beautiful about the void is that it's separated from creationism. So if you individuate God as a source, so void would be individuated, and then the creator of the everything. So you can place the blame on the creator, but if you don't really need to place a blame on the void, because the void is individuated. It really is nothing. It's not even the creation. So when people say like they're one with the Tao, or they worship the Tao, to me it's very similar to how I feel like the void is like with us. It's like being calm enough to know that, I don't know, it's like this deep serenity is how I I feel it. But obviously I'm probably misinterpreting things differently than others, but yeah. The Codex, the Vatican stuff, I'm not too interested in it, but it is, I mean, some of their books are like wicked, if that makes sense. They're like wickedly the Latin, I guess I really like Latin, so that's the only thing that I like about it. But it is stunning. Like this is the Latin Vulgate Bible. Yeah, there's something about Latin that is stunning, isn't it? But yeah, again, you can use this if you're writing something like National Treasure. You can use the characters to look through the Latin Vulgate as like part of the thing they need to do. Buddhism, the Tripitaka. Some of these videos are really difficult to go through. Let's see if it explains it well.
This video will explain the origin of human life on Earth as told by Buddha in the Pali Canon. According to Buddha, the Earth is formed, developed, and will then be destroyed due to 3 causes: water, fire, or wind. After a while, the new Earth is formed again, and destroyed again, continuing in an endless cycle. The Earth before our present Earth was destroyed by fire. All humans died, and were reborn as gods, in the Devas of Streaming Radiance realm. Devas of Streaming Radiance realm is one of the 31 realms of Buddhism. According to Buddhism, when a person dies, he or she will be reborn in one of the 31 realms, from low to high. The lowest is the realm of suffering in hell and hungry ghosts, then the highest realm is the heaven called sphere of neither perception nor non-perception. In the Devas of Streaming Radiance realm, they take the form of a deva, their whole body emits light, moves through the air, feeding on delight, and they live here for quite a long time. After a fairly long period of time, the Earth was formed again, which is the Earth we live on now. The world at that time was only water with a dark color, no sun, no moon, no stars, no day and night, no weather. And when our Earth was formed, a large number of celestial beings, in the Devas of Streaming Radiance realm, were born on Earth. They take the form of a deva, their whole body emits light, moves through the air, feeding on delight, all are the same regardless of male and female, they live like that on Earth, for quite a long time. After a while, the earthy taste dissolves in the water, and the Earth begins to appear, described as foam, rising on the surface of a layer of hot, cooling porridge. Soil has color, scent and taste. Some sentient beings immediately say, "Look, what is this? I have never seen this before." And they use their fingers to taste the taste of the soil. Some are ugly. Being without beauty. And when using rice as food, the body begins to have differences. Die, you unclean thing. How can a sentient... So some people scolded him, some people... Humans on Earth were born from beings, in the Devas of Streaming Radiance realm, meaning, they were not created by any gods, or born by someone, but by they die from the Devas of Streaming Radiance realm, then are reborn on Earth, also known as spontaneous generation. To better understand spontaneous generation, we know that according to Buddhism, there are 4 types of birth. The first is spontaneous generation, second is womb-born generation, the third is egg-born generation, the fourth is moisture-born generation. Spontaneous generation are beings suddenly exist, suddenly appear, without going through any embryonic stage. For example, sentient beings in the Devas of Streaming Radiance realm are reborn as humans on Earth. Womb-born generation are beings born from the fetus, such as humans and animals. Egg-born generation are beings born from eggs, including feathered creatures like chickens and birds, reptiles like turtles and snakes, and aquatic creatures like fish. Moisture-born generation are beings born from damp places, such as some insects, mosquitoes, bacteria, germs. Hopefully this video will help everyone.
Yeah, that was really interesting. I think Buddhism, what they have to offer more than any other religion, is that wheel of reincarnation.
This video is sponsored by CuriosityStream. Get access to my video streaming service, Nebula, when you sign up for India, and is now the world's 4th largest religion, with over 520 million followers, or 7% of humanity, almost all located within this circle. And if you live outside of this circle, you most likely don't know a lot about Buddhist belief. So what is Buddhism? Who is the Buddha? And is life just an endless cycle of pain, misery, disappointment, and death? Well, let's find out. Prophecy. He was terrified that Prince Siddhartha would become a religious leader instead of taking his place on the throne. To avoid the prophecy, he hid all human suffering from Siddhartha. Siddhartha lived in fancy palaces, had the finest clothes and jewelry, ate and drank what he pleased, and married a beautiful bride. His dad fired all the sick, ugly, and aging servants, and no one could speak to Siddhartha about any of life's miseries, like death. This could obviously never backfire. Siddhartha felt a deep sense of dissatisfaction with this luxurious life of his. At 29 years old, after finally being allowed to go on a trip outside the palace, Siddhartha saw an old man, a sick man, and finally, a corpse. He spiraled into an existential crisis. He thought, why do anything in life when old age, sickness and death would get everyone, eventually? Anyway, on another visit outside, Siddhartha came across a homeless monk that had given up all possessions. This guy seemed pretty wise and happy. So Siddhartha decided that he would abandon his princely life and become a wandering monk in search of an answer to life's suffering. Siddhartha spent the next 6 years learning from India's greatest yoga and meditation masters. Then he joined a group of hermits in the forest that practiced extreme fasting and intense meditation. After 6 long years of eating nothing but seeds that had blown into his lap, Siddhartha was little more than a living skeleton. He realized he wasn't any closer to an answer to suffering. In fact, the starvation had clouded his thinking. He was even further away from an answer than when he had started 6 years ago. ago. Something clicked. The path to enlightenment lay between the extremes of a prince's life of luxury and a hermit's life of starvation, and so he started to eat again. Re-energized, Siddhartha sat beneath a tree and vowed to meditate until he found an answer to life's suffering. In a deep state of meditation, Siddhartha sat there for days. He realized that by ending desire, he could end suffering. We only suffer because we want things to be a certain way. His fear of aging, sickness, and death slipped away. He realized all things were always changing, and the only thing he could do was accept and love those changes. Freed from desire, his mind and senses purified, he was filled with a sense of joy and compassion for everything on earth. Under that tree, now called the Bodhi tree, Siddhartha achieved enlightenment, or nirvana. He was now an awakened one, a Buddha. So how exactly did Buddha become enlightened? Well, luckily, he laid out a handy-dandy guide for everyone to follow. First, there's the Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths are the basis of Buddhism. The first noble truth is, life is suffering. Oh, wait, I know this sounds dark, but it's actually not. The actual first truth is that life is dukkha, which is an ancient Sanskrit word that normally translates to suffering in English. But it's more like dissatisfaction. Life will always be dissatisfying because humans cling to temporary things. Knowing about old age, sickness, and death, that's dukkha. Things changing when you don't want them to change, that's dukkha. Not getting what you want, that's also dukkha. And things never measuring up to your expectations, that's also dukkha. Dukkha suggests that even when life is not physically painful, it can be disappointing and unfulfilling. The second noble truth is that dukkha is caused by desire. Humans desire and cling to possessions, people, power, and life itself. So they end up constantly disappointed because all of those things end. People want things they don't currently have and want things they currently have to never change. But everything is always changing. Everything we think we already own is really borrowed. We want to live forever and we want our loved ones to stay the same forever. But you can't catch a running stream. You can't have a permanent relationship with an impermanent world. It always ends in disappointment. Eventually, you discover that the bottomless breadsticks are in fact bottomed. Desire fuels suffering in the same way that wood fuels a fire. Fire consumes everything that you feed it and will always demand more fuel. The only way to kill a fire is to stop feeding it breadsticks. The Buddha taught that the secret to a happy life is to enjoy what you have without attachment and to not want what you don't have. The third noble truth is that there is an end to suffering. Since we cause our own suffering, we can also cure it. You can't change the things that happen to you, but you can change your responses. And the fourth noble truth is that the Buddha's Noble Eightfold Path leads to the end of suffering. The Noble Eightfold Path, or the Middle Way, is an 8-step guide to deprogramming the desire-addicted brain. It might be called a path, but you should think of it more as a wheel, with 8 spokes that you spin all together. The 8 parts are right view. Right view is accepting the Four Noble Truths, that suffering exists and that by following the Buddha's teachings, there's a way out of it. Right thought. The Buddha said that your worst enemy cannot harm you as much as your own thoughts. Don't let negative thoughts like greed, fear, and anxiety cloud your mind. Fill your mind with positive ones like love, kindness, and compassion. Right speech. Focus on positive words and stay away from negative ones like gossip, hurtful words, and lies. These only cause yourself and others to suffer. Right action. The Buddha taught the philosophy of ahimsa, or non-violence. Instead of hurting others with your actions, you should try and have an endless love for all life. Good actions include conquering anger with love, evil with good, meanness with generosity, lies with truth, and smiggity smashing that likety-like button and clickety-clacking the scribbity-subscrew button. Bad actions include killing, stealing, drugs, and engaging in non-consensual sex. Right livelihood. Avoid jobs that involve death, weapons, slavery, that harm animals, drugs, and any kind of exploitation. But livelihood isn't just occupation. Be an honest and kind parent, friend, and partner. The next 3 are related to meditation. You have right effort. Right effort builds on right thought. It means putting effort into welcoming and creating good thoughts and pushing out bad and negative reactions from you in each moment to make their lives better.
So that's quite different and more structured than a lot of what we've seen before. And I think the thing I love the most about it is that it's so much about being kind. Like you said, just like being at one and at peace with what you have. Okay, so we are basically now that that was the Pali Canon, the Buddhist sacred text, which is also called the Tripitaka. The Ennead and Metamorphosis, it's Roman mythology. So how at first the Romans stole the Greek gods, so that's some more about like how that was the pantheon of the Roman gods. Then we get the New Testament.
The New Testament. If you open up a Bible to its table of contents, you'll see it's made up of 2 large collections, the Old and New Testaments. The word testament refers to a covenant partnership, which is what both of these collections are all about. They tell one epic and complicated story of God's covenant partnership with Israel and all humanity. The Old Testament is called Tanakh in Jewish tradition. It's a unified scroll collection of 39 Israelite texts that were over 1,000 years in the making. In contrast, the 27 books of the New Testament all came into existence within 30 to 40 years of each other. They were all written by first-generation followers of Jesus. From the early period, Christian communities began collecting these texts and reading them alongside the Old Testament as one unified story that leads to Jesus. The New Testament begins with 4 narrative books that together are called the Gospel. They tell the story of Jesus of Nazareth's life, death, and resurrection as an announcement of good news. They're followed by a 5th according to the same pattern. The second act is a longer and more violent version of the first, and he spoke and acted as if he was Israel's divine king. But in Jesus' multi-ethnic family, the new Jesus and the Spirit, a new creation has burst open here and now. And this leads us to the book of Revelation, where the whole biblical story comes together in powerful symbolism and imagery. Jesus is portrayed as a slaughtered, bloody lamb, who is exalted as the divine king of the world. He's leading his people out of slavery and exile in Babylon, and as they resist Babylon's influence, they may have to suffer alongside their slain leader. But when you follow the risen king, not even death can prevent the dawn of the new creation, which is here depicted as a new Jerusalem garden temple, the true home of humanity after its long exile. And so on the Bible.
Yeah, everyone's familiar with the Bible. I have here like the story of the Bible. Might be really funny, I don't know.
Hi, you live on Earth. It's got a lot of cool stuff in it, but why is it there? The Bible has a story to tell. In the beginning, before there was anything, before there was anywhere, before there was any when, there was God, who is everywhere and every when. He is isness itself, and he has everything, so he doesn't even need to create the world. But God still created the world. Wait, no, it didn't look like that at first. It was more formless and void and very dark. But God let there be lights, and now dark. But God let there be lights, and now there's light. And this light stuff, he has everything, so he doesn't even need to create the world. But God still created the world. Wait, no, it didn't look like that at first. It was more formless and void.
Yeah, there we go. So even in like the Christian Bible, there's still, in Genesis it says formless and void at first, so yeah.
Void and very dark. But God let there be lights, and now there's light. And this light stuff is pretty good, so God separated it from the darkness. And we should give these things names. Good news, the water below is now separated from the water above. Even more good news, now there's dry land. And guess what? Now there's life, just plants for now. But the plants might have cleaned up the air, so now you can see the sun, moon, and stars. That's going to be very useful. There's animals in the water, there's animals in the air, there's animals on the land. And now it's time for God's coolest creation so far. God made a human person called Adam and gave him an awesome garden, but he was still lonely, so God gave him a wife. These two kinds of humans are made out of the same stuff, but also different so they can have a relationship. God gave them a lot of trees, but two big important ones. They're allowed to eat from this one because if they do, they're going to live forever. But God told them not to eat from this one because if they do, they die. Seems like a pretty obvious choice, right? Actually, said some snake who's actually the devil, God doesn't want you to eat from this tree because you're going to become like.
So yeah, we can see how a lot of this stuff is already just reiterations of stories from the past. But okay, now let's go back to the Nag Hammadi library, which is what I find most interesting.
Hi. Have you ever thought that the world is a pretty messed up place? I mean, did you hear about the most recent insert political, economic, social, or environmental disaster here? Well, an early group of Christians had a story to tell of how it got that way. But then the early church burned all of their stuff because they didn't like it, and their story was lost. Until a whole bunch of their stuff was found in a garbage dump. These group of Christians were anything but consistent, but with a little bit of speculation, we can finally tell their story. In the beginning, there was only God, the One, the Father, or the Monad. From this monad, several other entities called aeons emanated or flowed from the monad. From these various aeons, they emanated further aeons in pairs, with each generation of pairs getting progressively lesser in power. But this is what it would look like from the inside. From the outside perspective, all of these aeons would be one collective, which we call the pleroma. Everything beyond the pleroma is chaos, or the kanoma. But everything went wrong one day when one of the aeons, Sophia, or the wisdom, makes a mistake. For whatever reason, Sophia fails to successfully emanate her own child. Either she doesn't have a partner, or tries to have a child without her partner. Regardless of the reason, this attempted virgin birth ends with the monster, Yaldabaoth. Sophia tries to hide this creation by throwing it into the pleroma. Yaldabaoth then finds itself alone in the chaotic nothingness, and seemingly all-powerful. Because of its nature being born from the pleroma and out of spite, Yaldabaoth emanates its own children in an attempt to create its own pleroma. But its creations are twisted and broken. The most important of its children being Sabaoth, and the various evil angels called the Archons. Unlike the pleroma, which is infinite and perfect, this false pleroma of Yaldabaoth was bound by his arbitrary rules. Yaldabaoth creates a shadowy veil, and from it explodes the concepts like matter, space, time, etc., creating the material universe. Content with its creation, Yaldabaoth declares itself to be the one and only God. Sophia hears this, and tells it that it's not the only God, and gives it the title of Samael, God of the blind, or Saklas, the fool. Yaldabaoth is angered by this and attacks the pleroma. The Archons take some of the divine energy from the pleroma. How they do so is inconsistent among the various Gnostic myths. With all this divine energy, Yaldabaoth and the Archons trap this.
So this explains it as a simulation. I think this is one of the only religions that I've really come across that is very, what do you call it, positive that this is a simulation. And so it's explaining that this is the representation for the simulation. It's not God, but the simulation, the God of the simulation believes it's only God. So it basically does all this horrible trapping, creates humans just to trap them into this cycle of death and rebirth in order to harvest it. So this to me explains that there's actually a higher God out there, and that unfortunately we're trapped in the experience under this matrix. But our souls are our souls are not this simulation is basically trapping our souls, and our souls are more pure than the simulation. So that's how I explain. This is my understanding of the world, what I believe, what I'm gonna write. You can just take this and say this is funny, but I'm sure the Matrix used a lot. Like the Matrix series, they probably borrowed heavily from this idea, and so yeah, it's like one of the most rebellious versions of world build.
Deep in the cosmic expanse, there was a lone god, ignorant of his origins, with a deep desire to craft a world in his own image. Yaldabaoth perceived the cosmos as a sea of disorder. He learned through trial and error that only destruction bred more chaos. And so, he embarked on a path to balance the dark with the light. In what could be perceived as millennia or mere seconds, he forged the world. He separated the sky from the waters, and from the waters emerged land. and crafted the sun, the moon, and stars orchestrated to govern the planet. But Yaldabaoth, misguided, was not the supreme god of the cosmos.
Before Yaldabaoth, there was Bythos and Barbelo, the masculine and feminine aspects of.
So, like I said, my username is related to Bythos. It's a void god, so that's why. Like I said, in the calculator, that's where you're gonna see what I believe in. So Bythos is an older god than Yaldabaoth. Bythos is a god. Oh wow, there's a rainbow outside. The rainbow is such a sign of a dome. I wish I could show you guys. But yeah, so basically like in Gnostic lore, the god of the Old Testament, Yahweh, is the simulation god, is Yaldabaoth. So Yaldabaoth is not the real god, it's not the true god. So keep that in mind as we go. And you guys probably know a lot about this yourselves, but if you didn't, here's some info.
God. Together they birthed celestial pairs known as eons, dwelling in the heavenly pleroma. Among them was Sophia, eon of wisdom. Yearning to explore beyond the pleroma, she separated from her divine consort to forge her own path. This disrupted the balance, leading to a cataclysmic exile into the dark abyss. From her descent, Yaldabaoth was born, but he was blind to Sophia's presence. Overwhelmed by guilt, Sophia banished herself from the cosmos, but energy never dies. As eons pass, a bright light pierces the abyss. The eon of divine intellect, Nous, calls for Sophia. Embracing the call of God's first successor, Sophia emerged from the shadows of the cosmos, reclaiming her divine form. Nous reveals to Sophia that Yaldabaoth has created a false world, imprisoning life and posing as the sole creator of existence. The revelation hit Sophia like a tidal wave. The shadow of her forgotten son crashing through the walls of her memory. Nous, the bearer of cosmic truth, reminds Sophia that even after her descent, her divine light was never lost. He welcomes her back to the pleroma, the home of the divine. Yet even in her restoration, traces of sadness remained. Her redemption came at a cost, for what followed would change everything. The Supreme Mother, the wife of God, Barbelo, descends before Sophia. All Sophia ever wanted was to be in the warm embrace of Mother Father God. But she couldn't rid herself of the guilt and shame to fully embrace Barbelo's warm and radiant light.
Why are you ashamed, Sophia?
I don't know my purpose. I thought creating my own successor would make me feel worthy of being here. But now, the very being I created holds the power I once thought I needed.
Of the divine plan. Of free will. Now, you hold the key.
Her essence.
Before there was depth to the skies, I was brought forth. Before the water guided, like a master worker, to bring them the truth about.
With Sophia, it's interesting because she's, you know how we say like the kind of feminize the Mother Nature? So she would be the emblem of Mother Nature, but her name means wisdom. And it's interesting that wisdom needs to make a mistake in order to be wise. So it's kind of like a riddle about wisdom. It's a riddle about the Mother Nature, and it's also a riddle about the virgin birth, because Sophia creates the simulation god through that, and so it, like paralleling to some of the Christian ideas of the virgin birth. I love it. Oh, it's so good. It's like, oh, finally, and this is ancient, right? Like 100 AD. This is right about the time that the New Testament had been formed. So it's just another, and this is probably an estimation, like it's probably even older. So it's not like a new thing. Like Gnosticism is so old, and that's what makes it so fascinating and interesting. So in the Nag Hammadi library, there's a Apocryphon of John, and that's one of the most interesting parts of it. Let's see if I have another good video that's not like super old.
Acme created.
Oh, this is just reading the entire thing. Well, anyway, if you're interested in more, I would really recommend the Apocryphon of John. It breaks it down. So if you because there was a time when like I was really wanting to learn more about Gnosticism, and I was like, well, where's everyone getting these stories about? Like, I would join Discord servers and they'd be like, oh yeah, I know so much about Gnosticism. I'm all like, how do you know? How do you? And then they were like, oh, you should read the Nag Hammadi. So for any reference of like, you want to get the story right, the Nag Hammadi library, they have some stunning books. And again, it's all about finding the right books. The Apocryphon of John, you're really gonna learn about these the origin of the world, the Pantheon and the simulation. The hypostasis of the archons is gonna talk about the planets. Pistis Sophia is about Sophia. We just kind of watched that video about Sophia, wisdom. And Apocalypse of Adam is about like the Garden of Eden and Adam's point of view, which is a bit different than the traditional garden. And Gospel of Thomas is a different take on the role of Jesus. And yeah. So the Emerald Tablets are slightly under Gnosticism. It's more Hermeticism, but that's where you get like the Thoth, the Atlantean. So if you ever, it's kind of like it's like a spin-off because it's from 600 AD. It's a spin-off of Egyptian lore, Atlantis lore, Hermeticism, and Gnosticism. So, and it's 600 AD, so it's after that. It's a bit of a newer text compared to some of it, but it's still quite interesting. So Thoth is a fascinating character. If you're gonna include any of the characters of mythology, you might want to think about Thoth. Oh my god, there's so many ads.
Step into a world of ancient Atlantean wisdom. The Emerald Tablets are said to be writings from none other than Thoth himself, transcribed in an age long since past. In them, he describes his descent into the underworld to uncover the secrets of immortality, his transformation into a deity, the fall of Atlantis, and the secrets of unlocking the power of the human soul. In the summer of 2019, I traveled to Costa Rica to participate in an ayahuasca ceremony at Rhythmia Life Advancement Center. Each night of ceremony, Thoth was present with me. He revealed many mysterious things in life, including the gift of the New Merkaba, and set me on a path to create Spirit Mysteries, the Spirit Science Mystery School. In that week, I also found myself translating and decoding the Emerald Tablets for a loved one who had joined me in ceremony. The experience coupled with inspiration from work. This book was originally translated nearly 100 years ago by Dr. Doriel, who was the first to bring these writings forward. In this new Aquarian Age edition of the Emerald Tablets, along with this new translation,
Over the world then broke the great waters, drowning and sinking, changing Earth's balance until only the Temple of Light was left standing on the great mountain on Undal, still rising out of the water. Some there were who were living, saved from the rush of the fountains. Called to me then the Master, saying, Gather ye together my people, take them by the arts ye have learned of far across the waters, until ye reach the land of the hairy barbarians, dwelling in caves of the desert. Follow there the plan that ye know of. Gathered I then my people and entered the great ship of the Master. Upward we rose into the morning. Dark beneath us lay the temple. Suddenly over it rose the waters, vanished from earth, until the time appointed was the great temple. Fast we fled toward the sun of the morning, until beneath us lay the land of the children of Chem. Raging, they came with cudgels and spears, lifted in anger, seeking to slay force. Deep and yet deeper placed I a force house or chamber. The races of man, living forever neath the cold fire of life, shall shine among men. Spoke to me then the voice, Go as ye will, so be it decreed. The night never is quenched in the veil of the darkness, never is quenched by the veil of the night. Into men's hearts I looked by my wisdom, found them not free from the bondage of strife, free from the toils, by fire, O my brother, lest it be buried in the shadow, living at times in realms of brightness, living through darkness, gaining the light. Know, O man, that light is thine heritage. Know that darkness is only a veil, sealed.
Yeah, it's quite a tricky one. Let's see, like honestly, it's spoken in like autobiography kind of way, but it does have so if you look at like the tablets, it kind of just has some keys. So it's like kind of a guidebook on how to like basically like how to take knowledge from this ancient like he's talking about the fall of Atlantis, and then how he's seen like so much of humanity come and go, and you can just take some knowledge, either knowledge or some inspiration. The Celtic mythos is called the Liber Gabala Irin.
Look, Christianity, we gotta talk. You make my job really hard sometimes. All I want to do is research these cool ancient mythologies and find out how they work. But half the time when I start looking, it's like, oh, sorry, we've been Christian for 1,500 years. We couldn't possibly tell you about our nifty pantheon of pagan gods and the sparkling tapestry of mythology they wove together because we've just gotten Wayne, Big J, and the Magnificent 12. I just want to learn, man. Greek and Egyptian mythology don't have this problem too bad since we still have the primary sources, and even if the translation ends up biased, we can always just go back to the original Greek and see what Homer really wanted us to think. But things get tricky with, for instance, Norse mythology, where despite having a writing system as early as the 2nd century CE, the first written account we have of the mythology was compiled 1,100 years later, well after the region was fully Christianized. We can learn a lot from the Eddas, but we can't automatically tell how much of them were added later to fit the new belief system, or otherwise resulted from the social shift. And while some additions are pretty obvious, there's theories that 600 years, and by then it was already so bowdlerized that there's basically no available primary sources anywhere. And while there wasn't much cultural drift and the ritual tradition seems to have preserved most of the core elements of Ireland, it's now clear that it's a bit more of a pseudo-history, or a mythology, you could say. A way to preserve a quintessentially Irish myth structure while framing it in a very historical Christianity-approved light. And to start us off, the first chapter is literally just Genesis translated into Irish. Subtlety, thy name is nothing I can easily pronounce. But we get our first deviation from Bible canon when we're introduced to Kesser, totally canonical granddaughter of the biblical Noah and leader of the first group to set foot in Ireland. Noah, hoping that maybe the Great Flood won't reach the far west edge of the world, directs Kesser to take a fleet as far west as they can go. 40 days before the flood is due to hit, Kesser and the gang arrive on the green shores of Ireland. But there's a shipwreck and most of them are killed, leaving only Kesser, 49 other women, and let's just call them the 12 rovers. And when we take a look, see they obviously drowned. It to have nothing kind of light. And if you
Right, so I think what she was saying, like, is that it's difficult to really know what the pagan believed in ancient Celtic lands, because a lot of it has been Christianized, and like she said, the first book of this Celtic sacred text is Genesis revisited. So, but yeah, there's different gods still. So have I watched Gnostic Warrior on YouTube? I haven't. Let me type him in, since we were just on the topic of Gnosticism. Let's see if they popular or, yeah, Anunnaki. Oh, nice. I'll send this to myself. This is not my usual YouTube, so this is my music one, but I'll send this to myself and make sure I will follow. Thank you. Okay, the Quran, it's not something that I'm gonna touch on a lot, but I guess I mean I looked at it briefly. It's not something that I'm super interested in to even talk about, but you get the point. You can learn some stuff about it.
5. The 5
Oh my gosh, ads.
service Nebula. When you sign up for Curiosity's word, Islam means peace, safety, and security. The Arabic word for peace, salam, comes from this root along with the Hebrew word shalom. So, submission to God means finding peace by following God. Around the world, regardless of language, most Muslims greet each other in Arabic saying, Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you. Islam originated in 7th century Arabia with a guy called Muhammad. Before we can get into Muhammad's life, we need to talk about the elephant in the room. His name is Sebastian, and he is standing in front of my whiteboard explaining the controversy surrounding drawing Muhammad. Sebastian, can you just scoot over there? Can you just please move? Okay. Drawing Muhammad is a controversial and emotional political issue. Firstly, the Quran, Islam's holy book, has no ban on drawing Muhammad, but the big three Abrahamic faiths, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, all have rules against making images of any living thing. This comes from the Torah, and some Muslims and Jews take this rule very seriously. Islam kept this rule going so that Muslims wouldn't worship in front of images of Muhammad or God. Instead, they pray directly to God. Some Muslim societies have drawn Muhammad in the past, Iranian cultures especially. Today, most Muslims are offended by disrespectful images of Muhammad, but respectful images are usually fine, especially in Shia Islam, the second largest branch of Islam. And the majority of Muslims disagree with violence in response to depictions of Muhammad. To be respectful, as we always try to be, this silhouette will stand in place of Muhammad. No, not that. That's Sebastian again. Please, Sebastian, move. You're making me look like a fool. This is the silhouette. Sorry. Muhammad was born in 570 CE in Mecca in Arabia. His parents died when he was very young, and Muhammad grew up as an orphan. Back then, the Arabs worshipped hundreds of different gods, and Muhammad's tribe, the Quraysh, were the guardians of this building, the Kaaba in Mecca. They packed the Kaaba with hundreds of idols to different gods, and the Quraysh got filthy rich, taxing pilgrims visiting the Kaaba. Muhammad was deeply religious and wanted to improve his community. All around him, he saw poverty, injustice, war, and widespread discrimination against women and orphans. Muhammad saw the rich abuse the poor, and religious festivals had just become giant, decadent parties dedicated to the worship of idols. This is the best religion ever! Woo, religion party! Instead of attending religious festivals every year, Muhammad would just go and pray alone in a cave. Then, in 610 CE, in the month of Ramadan, during one of these lonely cave prayers, Muhammad, now 40 years old, was visited by Gabriel, or Jibril in Arabic. Jibril told Muhammad that there was one God, and that he was now God's messenger. Muhammad received revelations directly from God and then recited them aloud. His companions wrote these revelations down, and they became the Quran, Islam's holy book. Muhammad's words were radical in tribal Arabia. He was saying stuff like, Arab has no superiority over non-Arab, white has no superiority over black. He also demanded an end to the practice of killing infant girls because boys were preferred, saying that girls were equal blessings from God. This didn't exactly go down well in tribal, sexist, and hierarchical Mecca. This whole one God business annoyed the Quraysh because they made money charging people to visit Kaaba to worship hundreds of gods. The poor, slaves, and others flocked to Muhammad. The Quraysh, now furious and losing money, abused the Muslims, especially the vulnerable ones like slaves, who were frequently tortured if they converted. These act as the blueprint for how Muslims behave. First you have the Shahada. The Shahada is simply a statement. There is no God but God, and Muhammad is the messenger of God. This is the shortest possible explanation of what Muslims believe. Saying it just once honestly makes a person a Muslim. Salat. Salat means prayer, and practicing Muslims pray 5 times a day. Before Salat, Muslims must perform wudu, or ritual washing of the face, arms, head, and feet. Each Salat begins with the saying, God is most great, or Allahu Akbar, followed by prayers in Arabic, along with movements like standing, bowing, and kneeling. Seriously, Muslim prayer looks like a proper workout. Because a Muslim stops whatever they're doing to pray 5 times a day, they're reminded of God and the values of the Quran. And when praying, Muslims face Mecca. The direction towards Mecca is called the Qibla. Muslim places of worship, mosques, are planned so that one wall, the Qibla wall, always faces Mecca. Even though mosques look different depending on where they are in the world, they all have a Qibla wall. Zakat. Zakat is a charitable tax on wealth that all Muslims should pay annually. The basic rate is about 2.5% of your current wealth. The Quran says, give money cheerfully to the relatives, the orphans, the needy, the traveling alien, the beggars, and to free the slaves. I'm assuming traveling alien probably means something different in that context than how I imagine it. Or does it? Today, every year, somewhere between $200 billion and $1 trillion is given to charity by Muslims across the globe through zakat. Muhammad preached that accumulating wealth was greedy. To stop the rich profiting off of poverty, the Quran outlaws interest-bearing loans known as usury or riba. Money can never be traded for money. Muslim wealth can only come from actual labor or fair trade. Swam. Swam is fasting. During the holy month of Ramadan, Muslims fast from dawn to sunset. Fasting includes no eating, no drinking, and no smoking. Pregnant women, the sick, and the disabled do not have to fast if it puts stress on their bodies. And women on their period can also delay the pillars of Islam. Next, let's look at some topics you've probably heard a lot about when it comes to Islam. Women. Islam and women is a pretty topical issue. So how does Islam address women, and what exactly is the deal with the veil? Well, first of all, this is a hijab, this is a niqab, this is a chador, and this is a burqa. The hijab is by far the most popular veil you'll see. The burqa and niqab are only found in deeply conservative communities or Afghanistan. And the chador is mostly found in Iran. Not all Muslim women wear veils, and some Muslim majority nations have actually banned headscarves, while in other Muslim majority nations, women are pressured to wear them. It's a controversial issue within Islam itself. But why do some Muslim women wear these veils? One reason is culture. The veil is part of many people's cultural identity. Another reason is that Islam preaches modesty. Muslims should be modest in their words, actions, tempers, desires, appetite, everything really. Men and women are instructed to wear loose-fitting clothing that should cover most of the body. There isn't a difference made in the Quran between how men and women should dress, and it never states that women need to cover their faces. Veils in general seem to have entered early Muslim culture from their Roman neighbours. The only reference in the Quran to women covering their faces is about Muhammad's wives, and most Muslims consider those verses to only apply to Muhammad's wives. Throughout the Quran, God repeatedly attacks those that say women are inferior to men, and repeatedly demands that women be treated equally. Muhammad even pushed for women's education, saying, if a daughter is born to a person and he brings her up, gives her a good education, trains her in the arts of life, I shall myself stand between him and hellfire. The Quran also guarantees a woman's right to work, divorce, and own property. Halal. Halal is simply the Arabic word for permissible. If something's halal, that means Muslims can do it without worrying it's a sin. Most foods are halal except for...
Okay, so it's really something that I'm just not familiar with, and like he explained in the beginning, like it's so sensitive that you might just not want to even really talk about it. So, but it's still like the culture is still stunning, like regardless. Like every culture has things to marvel at, if that makes sense. Okay, so Poetic Eddas, the Norse mythos is quite late, and again, that video earlier kind of touched on some Norse stuff. They were saying like, while the Norse Pantheon is really old, that the only way they wrote, the texts are a lot more modern, like 1080.
And welcome back to this US Open office plan.
Is it gonna force me to watch a 1 minute 30? That's insane. 1 minute 30 ad. I'm like, it's still going.
Bumps every time I read these in Old Norse. It awakens up memories from past lives every single time, I swear. With book reviews each week, so you can find that. The prose Edda is great, but it was written about 200 years after, official pagan times by a Christian, so it's not super reliable. But the Poetic Edda, it was also written around the same time, but because of language style and theme and things like that, most of the poems have been proven to have been composed in pagan times, by pagan times, for pagans. So these are the original myths that were told for hundreds or even thousands of years. But, of course, it's only in Old Norse, so we need some translations of these. And to be 100% honest, the translation of these have been all crap the past 1 to 200 years. The problem, with most of these is they're written in the 18 and 1900s, and they're translating them with language that you would find in a play, like in the Renaissance area. Like Crawford, he has some great stuff, a cool channel, and a knowledgeable, and near direct word-for-word translation. You could be reading one stanza for half an hour trying to figure out what it means. So absolutely for beginners, yes, get Jackson Crawford's translation so you can grasp the main storyline of the myth. But eventually, you need to get yourself one with a direct translation to really grasp the true meaning. And most importantly, it's so important to translate the names of the gods and deities. Only then can you really start to understand that the gods aren't just great beings, watching over us from the clouds and things like that, but they're actual very real things in the universe, like I'm showing a couple examples of here, the gods' names translated. So what is the best translation of the Poetic Edda that will provide you with all of these? Maria Kvilhaus. She hasn't actually translated the whole Poetic Edda and published it in a single a few translations of prose Edda texts as well. Also, in all of these, she has the Old Norse text right next to her translation, so we can see ourselves what the original was and learn a bit of these. And I swear, I get goosebumps every time I read these in Old Norse. It awakens up memories from past lives every single time, I swear, I promise. Or it wakes up memories in your DNA, whatever you want to believe. Also, it's nice because we can look at it ourselves and see, what makes sense. We're not just taking the author's word that he's done a good job translating. So I think every poetic Edda should be written next to the original Old Norse like this. If you have a Poetic Edda that doesn't have that, then I recommend getting an Old Norse version of the Poetic Edda. And I think there's not only does she translate hundreds of stanzas in the Poetic and Prose Edda, but she gives her analysis and theories as to what are
Edda consists mostly of poetry from the Codex Regius, and it's pretty much the #1 source of all modern knowledge of Norse mythology, closely followed by its non-rhyming counterpart, the Prose Edda. Now, it's structured like most collections of myths, in that it's a colossal mess of short stories, most of which have little to no connection to any of the others. So in this video, we'll focus on the most important, interesting, or bizarrely culturally representative of the stories found in. Oh, and before we get started, do me a favor and leave your marvel-based assumptions about the Norse deities by the door right there. Yeah, thanks. Just to confirm, Odin's not a neglectful father, Loki's not a misunderstood puppy dog, and Thor's not a chick. Before we go any further, I'd like to apologize profusely for my complete inability to pronounce Icelandic words. With that in mind, this is the Vrolspa. So the is the Norse creation myth, and let me tell you, it's kind of surreal. Yes, even by creation myth standards. Basically, in the beginning, there was this big old giant named Ymir in a big empty space called the Gnung. Then along came the sons of Bor, Odin, Vili, and Ve, who killed Ymir and used his body to make Midgard. Then all the Aesir got together because apparently they were other gods at this point. And they had a big old party, which was then interrupted when the Norns showed up and told them to get back to work making the dwarves. So it follows the 7 stanzas of dwarf names, several of which sound suspiciously familiar. Tolkien, you hack! So then Odin and a couple of his pals went out and made all the humans, elves, dwarves, etc. Although in a later story, Heimdall is credited to being responsible for that. Meanwhile, Yggdrasil, the world tree, was being grown by the Norns, who hung out under its roots and controlled the fates of men and gods alike. That's sounding a little Pan-Hellenic. Weird. Anyway, then a war happened between the Aesir and the Vanir, who were like the Aesir but prettier, and Asgard got a little destroyed, so the gods commissioned a giant to rebuild it. However, the giant asked to be paid in the sun, the moon, and the goddess Freya as his wife, and because the gods really didn't want to pay that price, and who can blame them, they got Loki to do his thing and disrupted construction so the giant couldn't finish in the time given. The giant got pretty pissed about this and threatened the Aesir, at which point Jove and God with a capital G, previous poem, Odin's tendency to disguise into the romance, that's total.
So yeah, it does, like she said, it does differ kind of, I feel like they have like fire. It's one of the only religions that I've seen that has fire pretty early on in their pantheon gods. Because the other ones just mainly focus on water and air. But yeah, it's funny because she was like, leave your assumptions about Norse gods about like from Marvel movies. Because yeah, a lot of them you'll know like from Thor and Loki and stuff. So 95 Protestant theses is what separated Protestantism from Catholicism primarily. So it's another one that's kind of just like good info to have. King James Version Bible. I want to show you guys. I actually have it. I'll be right back because I want to show you guys that I have brought it. So I bought the King James Version Holy Bible. It was written in 1611. So besides Gnosticism, I'm also primarily more Protestant. Because I grew up within the realm of Christianity, I was kind of forced into Catholicism, and because I had bad experiences with Catholicism, when I found out about Protestantism and when I found out about King James, if I had to stay and say like I had to stay in Christianity, then I would lean towards Protestantism. And specifically, I appreciate the way that King James had like, it was something like 40 or 50 people translate all the other Bibles and put it together. And it's got the old, ancient, archaic English. So when like J and I was still intertwined in U and V, very close to Latin, but it's actually English. And it's also stunning that in this 1611 version of the Bible, they worked with Sir Francis Bacon, and he's like a master cryptographer. So a lot of this has encoded and decodes, and I think it's not just like the way it's told and the words used, but the way it's formatted. It's just gorgeous, and there's like so many pictograms here showing like the tree genealogies of the characters in the Bible, and then there's also a map somewhere. Let me find the map for you guys. So if you're making books, I think it's this is kind of like inspiring me to how to format my book. Have like make sure to include the charts in the beginning. And probably this is how Lord of the Rings and other like Game of Thrones, they're also inspired by books like these. So you can see like this is the land of Canaan, the Gaza Strip, Jerusalem. Yeah, so King James is also a character in one of the main characters in my book, and my channel equals King James. So if we take that calculator again and put in King James. So just another narrator for my book series, another major character that we're gonna see in the creation of the Holy Bible. Yeah, but if you're interested in buying one of these books, it's about 50, this was 50 pounds secondhand, so it's quite expensive, but I think it's worth it if you're getting a copy of a Protestant Bible. Like, it's hard to read, I will say, but it's I find myself like, it's like learning a new language, because like, let me just read the first Genesis chapter really quick. You'll see how different it is. It'll get different. 1 second. So in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth was without form. The way it's spelled is different, like void, V-O-Y-D. And darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. So, and God said the light that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. So I guess the only way to really tell is the way things are written. Sorry, but everything's alright. That's not gonna work out. But like darkness, it's the calligraphy is different, and the like darkness, for example, is N-E-S-S-E. So. Yay. I just wanted to share with that with you guys. Okay, so the Codex Borgia, I showed you guys a copy earlier. This stuff gets quite really difficult from here to try to understand what is going on. But I have been to Mexico, and I would go back again to kind of try to understand it more. But just as you're aware that it exists is like good enough, you know? Or if you want to like make a book and you're interested in some of the ways they've put it together, you can be inspired by that design. So the Codex Borgia is for the Aztecs, and the Popol is the Mayans, and they have a quite similar creation story. Enochian Keys is so interesting because, like, okay, you know, King James, the person that gave King James the throne to England was Elizabeth I, and Elizabeth I, she had a magician, and her magician was called John Dee, and John Dee is the inspiration behind 007, James Bond. So it's interesting that, but James John Dee created this religion and even like language of Enochian. And so he learned his own, he made up his own language. Kind of like how in Lord of the Rings he made up Elvish, so similar.
I hear you now saying, how, Finch? How will putting letters into a grid give me contact with angels? I don't know.
What up, everybody? It's me, Finch, and today we're going to be studying Enochian magic. Enochian magic is a form of vision magic, or magic which is intended to give us visions, which was created by a couple of magicians in the mid-1500s. This magic is complicated and confusing, and a lot of people think it's very powerful, but I can't figure out for the life of me why. So I'm going to be trying to learn Enochian magic, and I thought you could come along with me for the ride. Magic is not necessarily a tool that we can use to get results, right? Magic can also be a tool or a lens through which we can view the world. So while you can use this to summon angels, as it were, in the same way that you would summon a goetic demon, typically magicians are using this to induce visions, but I do think that there's something to be said about the process of building the tools, right? The tools in this case being tables of letters, which can be used to spell out these different angelic names. Why does this work? I don't know. But I do know that these magicians did it and found some crazy results. So I'm going to do it too. And thanks for joining me. In contemporary practice, Enochian magic consists of two major components: a sequence of incantations, which are used to induce visions, and a diagram of the universe that includes within it a hierarchy of angels upon whom the magician can call for help in their day-to-day life. Enochian magic has been surrounded by controversy for quite some time, probably because the two magicians who created it or who channeled the system never really explained how to use it. So it's left modern magicians kind of having to reverse engineer the system themselves. And also because Edward Kelly, the scryer involved, has quite a bit of a shady history. So there's a lot of debate and a lot of disagreement among many different magical communities about what Enochian magic even is, how it should be used. Is it angelic? I'm not going to get into any of that. I'm just going to be working with the system as it was on the other side. Enochian magic comes to us from two magicians in the mid-1500s, John Dee and Edward Kelly. John Dee is like if you close your eyes and imagine a wizard, you'd be imagining John Dee. He is Merlin. He was a mathematician, a philosopher, an astronomer, a scientist, and a sorcerer. He was born in 1527 to a wealthy merchant. He would quickly distinguish himself in academia as a brilliant lecturer, and before he was 30, he would be turning down a position as a principal lecturer of mathematics at Oxford to take a position in Queen Elizabeth's court as the Queen's astronomer and advisor. It wasn't until he was well into his middle age in 1580 that he would begin his experiments with scrying. Perhaps influenced by earlier magical works like the Keys of Solomon and the workings of Abramelin, Dee began searching for a talented scryer to help him make contact with angels. During this search, Dee was approached by an Irish scryer named Edward Kelly. Kelly, 26 at the time, remains a bit of an enigma. His life before meeting Dee is shrouded in rumors and mystery, some claiming he was a powerful alchemist, and others claiming he was a counterfeit and con man. Whatever the truth, we may never know, but he certainly must have been charismatic because Dee was so convinced of Kelly's abilities after they first met that the two became fast partners in Dee's quest for enlightenment for the better part of the next decade. Taking a quick break from the history, I want to point out something interesting that happened. While I was filling out the table, I somehow managed to cut myself or to reopen a cut on my hand. You can see here in a second, I get a bit of blood on the table. Whatever the cut was, so this process at the universe. Duquette, in his book Enochian Vision Magic, notes that this book is still a rich mystery for modern magicians to explore, claiming that it will only be a matter of time before someone decodes these tables into a workable magical system. It was also during this time that the magicians were given the Enochian or angelic alphabet. It was then, between April 10th and July 13th, 1584, that John Dee and Edward Kelly would receive, in a series of visions, the system of magic now known as Enochian. They were told this magic was the same magic given by God to the biblical character Enoch, which is where the modern-day name for the system comes from. The core of Enochian magic is a series of 48 invocations or incantations in the Enochian language known as the Enochian calls. These calls are used to activate various parts of the elemental table you can see me drawing right now, as well as to access the 30 aethers, or planes of existence. These aethers, or airs, were described to the magicians as being the totality of creation, and in which the entire universe is contained. Each of these airs was given with the names of the governing angels and the various parts of the earth which were ruled by the air, and they were also given a number. Some claim that Dee was in fact a spy working for Queen Elizabeth, and so it makes sense that having a magical tool to gather information on very localized regions would be something Dee would be interested in. However, modern magicians treat these airs more akin to the various spheres on the Tree of Life, like astral planes to be visited in vision, or metaphorical descriptions of the fundamental parts of the universe. After that, early in the morning on Wednesday, June 20th, 1584, Kelly would awaken to the visitation of an angel identifying himself as Ave. Ave would show Kelly a vision that he would go on to describe in detail to Dee. Kelly until each table was filled. They were also given the 19th call, which can be modified to access each engineer. So I recommend starting with the 30th aether, text, but I've linked below a list of the 8 breathe and relax more and more intense. This is going to be a quick and dirty breakdown of the Great Table as it is understood by the Golden Dawn magicians. I'm not going to go too in-depth. There's a lot of complexity in this table, and I'd like to save some of that for a full video sometime. So if you are interested in having a more in-depth explanation of how this table works, please let me know in the comments, and I will definitely. So the pentagram, we could think of this as earth, air, water, and fire. Now, in the center, it's called the Great Cross, and these are 4 god names or 4 great names, which also relate to the elements. You can see that they go out from the center. Nanta, Bitome, this is Nanta, Bitome backwards, and the same thing coming up. Exar, Hikoma. Each one of these names also correlates to one of the elemental tablets.
Each one of these tablets has within it another great cross, and in the center here are the 3 ensign bearers. This is from Edward Kelly's vision. So we have Mor, Dial, Hectiga on the Earth tablet. We have the 7 elders, which radiate outward from the center, and each one of these correlate to different planets. Spiraling from the center, we have the king name, in this case ICZHIHA, and then each one of these corners becomes what's known as a subangle. A subangle of the elemental tablet also correlates to an element. So this subangle here would be earth in the earth elemental table, whereas this would be fire in earth. This subangle here is the subangle of earth in the tablet of fire. So we get some granularity in the types of angels that we're calling. So the basic procedure of invoking an angel from the Enochian table is to recite the call that correlates to the elemental table where the angel is located, and then to call to the angel through the hierarchy of names as described in Kelly's vision. So, for example, I'm going to be calling to the angel Axtir, who's an angel in the subangle of earth in the elemental table of earth. Since there's no angel for YouTubers, I've chosen Axtir because he's an earth in earth angel, and to me, earth correlates to material building and crafting, and his primary duty is that of transformation. And I name of the king, the planetary rulers, the god name of this earth sub, the great writer, and he's behind schedule this time.
You get the point. I think this provides a nice case study of like if you did want to build your own language, like you have this as a reference material of like something you could start with. I like what the word he used, like reverse engineer. You could find that out and do it for yourself. I don't know if I'll go so far as to write my own alphabet or language. That's something I haven't really thought about yet, but maybe in the future, when it gets closer, after I've kind of reviewed some more books, I might be interested in it. So, let's see. Sikhism, I'm not very familiar with. So let me see if I have a good animation. We're getting close here now. It's gonna get interesting with some of these last books.
This video is made possible thanks to most historically and cult gurus. The word guru means a teacher or spiritual guide. The guru teaches and the Sikh learns. The Sikhs follow the teachings of 10 succeeding gurus that have shaped Sikhism. The first and most important guru is Guru Nanak, the founder of Sikhism. Born in 1469 CE near what is today Lahore, Pakistan. Nanak was seen as special even as a child. As a baby, he was said to have had the laugh of an adult man. Here comes the bird. As a teenager, he preferred to listen to Hindu, who was roasted alive by the Mughal Emperor Jahangir. Numeral 1. One God is by far the most important belief in Sikhism. This may not be the kind of God you're used to though. Sikhs believe in a formless, genderless, universal God, beyond description. This God is all of reality and is within everything. They believe no idol or image could ever represent this being, so they use the sacred symbol of a conquer to represent it instead. Many Sikhs refer to this one God by the name Waheguru, Wondrous Lord. Guru Nanak and his followers constantly emphasized that this one could be understood in many different ways. No religion had a monopoly on the truth. Nanak's one could be known as Vishnu, Allah, the Tao, Yahweh, the algorithm, or any other name or belief. There was no need to fight over whose God was the true God, as they were all the same one. Recognize all mankind, whether Muslim or Hindu, as one. The same God is the creator and nourisher of all. Recognize no distinctions among them. The temple and the mosque are the same, so are Hindu worship and Muslim prayer. Human beings are all one. Guru Gobind Singh. The lack of a gender for this one God means that there is no difference between men and women in Sikhism. Sikhism was among the first major world religions to make the radical suggestion that maybe, just maybe, women are people too. Women in Sikhism have fought battles, led religious services, and even acted as some of the longest reigning leaders of the entire community. Sikhism isn't based on doing things to get into some heaven or hell. Hell is just life on earth, which your soul is constantly reborn into after you die, which is pretty dark. You see, Sikhs believe in reincarnation and karma, similar to Buddhists, Hindus, and Jains. But Sikhs believe that karma is modified by God, as in, karma might decide what life you're born into, but God makes sure that anyone can become a good person in their lifetime if they try. The goal of Sikh life is to break free from the cycle of rebirth by merging your soul back into God's soul. One does this by realizing that you are already a part of God. You just need to let go of your ego. When your soul remerges back into God's, this is called mukti, which is similar to Hinduism's moksha and means liberation. When you remerge, your soul is released from the cycle of rebirth and death and becomes infinite, timeless, and blissful. This is the closest thing Sikhs have to heaven. 2. Maya. Sikhs believe that God is and created reality, but we forget this because humans are distracted by illusion or Maya, which is anything that takes your mind off God. Maya keeps people trapped in the cycle of rebirth and death. Guru Nanak thought that Maya built a wall between people and God. The wall of Maya is built with the 5 thieves: lust, anger, greed, attachment, and pride. It is the duty of all Sikhs to avoid these thieves. The 5 thieves are caused by how mai, literally I, myself. How mai makes people say I am this, I am that, and it separates you from others, which blocks you from realizing your oneness with God. This ego causes people to live only for themselves, to spew negativity, and to crave power and wealth. Such a person is called munmuk, facing towards desires. Guru Nanak saw the world's problems as the negative effects of ego. Hindu versus Muslim, Israeli versus Palestinian, sitting down wipers versus standing up wipers. All of these conflicts are caused by ego and Maya. The Guru Granth Sahib said it is not religion or race, but it is wealth that divides brothers. But Guru Nanak taught that there was another direction people could face. By being a spiritual person, practicing compassion, truth, contentment, humility, and love, and meditating on God, you can instead become Gurmukh, facing towards the Guru. How does one become Gurmukh and egoless? Well, Sikhism offers a path to follow that can help, called the 3 pillars. Three pillars. The 3 pillars are 1. Nam Japo, which is meditation on God and reciting and chanting of God's name, Waheguru. This is normally done in the morning and before bed. This isn't supposed to just be some mindless ritual either. Sikhs are supposed to genuinely reflect on the qualities of God as they do this. 2. Kirat Karni, working hard on making an honest living. Guru Nanak said, only he who earns his living by the sweat of his brow and shares his earnings with others has discovered the path of righteousness. 3. 1. Chakna. This is sharing the fruits of your labor with others, providing free food and donating to the community. Sikh values. And adopt the same surname. And the 5th is Kara, a steel.
Well, after watching that, I'm actually quite impressed with like how peaceful of a religion it is, because it's kind of like implying that it doesn't really matter what creed you belong to, as long as like you understand that everything is consciousness and we're all connected. Yeah, I mean this probably didn't highlight every thing about it, but as for like a general overview, that's quite interesting. And again, it's only a few hundred years old, Sikhism. From my understanding, this book was published in 1604, so that's quite late. That's like well after, most of these religions. So, but yeah, again, it does seem quite peaceful, so that's an interesting point of view. So the Mormon book, one of the newer religions as well, 1830, borrows heavily from Christianity, so it's not that different at all. But let's see what we have.
In the Americas, around AD 350, Mormon, a holy prophet, began to compile and write the record of his people and God's dealings with them. Some records were included in first person, but most were abridged and edited by Mormon from hundreds of years of accounts and histories.
Mormon's record was finished by his son Moroni and buried in the earth. About 1400 years later, Mormon's record was revealed to a young man named Joseph Smith. It was translated by the gift and power of God and published as the Book of Mormon, another testament of Jesus Christ.
The Book of Mormon is the story of certain peoples that God led to the promised land in the Americas. The book speaks of 3 main groups, all of which began their stories in a biblical time and place. First, there are the Jaredites. Jared and those who followed him were led by God from the ancient Tower of Babel across the wilderness to the sea.
Nestled in the 8 barges, they were guided by the hand of God across the ocean to their promised land. Over the next 2,000 years, God continued to call prophets that worked to bring the people to God.
Although there were many periods of righteousness, ultimately, the people rebelled against God and destroyed each other in a massive civil war. The final Jaredite prophet, Ether, wrote a record of his people upon 24 plates of gold and hid them up.
As the Jaredite nation was declining, God
kingdom. Lehi, his family, and others were led by the Lord through the Arabian wilderness for years. Before they arrived at the land by the seashore they called Bountiful.
Some of which contain the writings of ancient prophets.
And 24 gold.
So from my understanding, it's just a different way that after the flood, I think, a bit different story of how the earth was repopulated.
On one of these proposal of the Mormon Jesus.
Good lord, that cartoon is way too old. But yeah, to be fair, it is quite similar to Christianity, so it's nothing like, to me, that like super shocks me. Okay, so the Book of the Law, this is obviously notoriously frowned upon. The Lema is a religion founded by Aleister Crowley, but I did try to find some of the elements from it to learn from.
Deep, disturbing, intense, sacrilegious, prophetic, yet beautiful. These are all words that could describe one of our most important, central, sacred, holy texts in Thelema, the Book of the Law. Today I'll be reading you Chapter 1. It was received by Aleister Crowley and his wife Rose Crowley on their honeymoon in Cairo, Egypt in 1904. I had to check the date. And this book is comprised of 3 different chapters, and it is a dictated text, meaning the speaker is a divine entity. In Chapter 1, the one I will be reading, the speaker is Nuit, the goddess of the night sky. So I hope you'll join me in the reading of this beautiful chapter, and I hope you enjoy.
So Crowley borrowed heavily from ancient Egyptian mythology because he took Nut. Nut was the goddess of the sky dome, and tailored the name so it's Nuit. So it's not exact. So they're just slapping names over like concepts. And this book is not, to me, very easy to read at all whatsoever. Here's kind of what it looks like. Yeah, it seems like, I think there's 3 deities he talks to within this book, and it's very like I don't know, it's so like pagan-y. It's very like poetry. Behold, like, O prophet, thou hast, remember, I am the empress, I am the hierophant. Like, it's very, yeah, like, what am I reading, like, to me it doesn't make sense. But the story is quite interesting. Again, you can draw influence about how, like, basically anyone can channel any sort of god or deity and write it down. It's something that you could do yourself. So don't feel like only certain people can do it. Only Crowley can do it because he traveled to Egypt. No, like, anyone can channel. If you're gonna learn anything from it. There's this one YouTube that I was like, I couldn't even believe how like similar her and I are.
Hello, this is Georgina Rose, part-time esoteric content creator and part-time Scarlet Woman, and welcome back to the Dr. Ellen YouTube channel. This is a channel where we discuss the occult, religion, mysticism, magic, and all those exciting topics. In this video, we're going to be talking all about a Phallic holy text called the Book of the Law. So the day this video goes up, if you're watching it the day of, is the first day of a Phallic holiday called the 3 Days of Writing of the Book of the Law. That commemorate 3 days this amazing text was channeled. So in this video, I wanted to give an introduction to the Book of the Law. I wanted to do some history, tell the story, because if you've tried to read this book, right, this book is confusing. It's a channeled writing, it's very coded, it's very much a cipher, and so for new practitioners, it can be really hard and scary. It can really throw people off of Thelema. And so I wanted to offer a little bit of introduction to help this make a little bit more sense, because I really fully believe you need that context to understand all the beauty and rich mystic information that comes out of this lovely little book.
Sorry, she like reminds me of myself, but like I'm not indoctrinated to Thelema and I don't ascribe to Crowley, and I no, but she obviously is a Thelemite. I've watched some of her videos and she doesn't condone things that Crowley has done, so it's good to know that there's like Thelemites or people that that don't regard Crowley as a savior in any way. So that's one thing to take of it.
There is, and I want to specify this, a warning and a rule that you are not supposed to interpret this book for other people, and it is in what we call the Taoist comment, which is a short commentary Aleister Crowley, the writer of the book, made on this, that you're not supposed to interpret it for other people lest you be a center of pestilence. So I'm going to give as much help as I can without sort of crossing that line. So this is a member of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn for breaking off and starting Thelema. And when this book was received, what he called the New Aeon, or the time of Thelema, began. So for some context on Crowley's practice, because that'll come in later, Crowley was very experienced in Hermetic practice and Kabbalah. So hopefully that gives a little bit of help. Basically, this whole saga begins, and when Crowley recounts it, he always starts with this part. So he was on a honeymoon with his new wife, Rose, and Rose was not an occultist. This is important. While Rose spent a lot of time around Crowley, so she probably picked up some occult ideas, she was not a practitioner herself. That's really... So Crowley goes, okay, I guess we got to invoke Horus. So they're in this little apartment in Cairo, and they decide to call down Horus right at noon on April 9th, 1904.
Ooh, and Horus at noon. It's interesting because we were talking about Horus. Remember earlier, we were saying that he is the embodiment of noon. So it's right here. Oh no, is that Ra? Huh. Okay, so they called upon Horus. Interesting, that's weird. They called upon Horus at noon. I don't know why. But like he's there. Crowley is in Egypt. He's invoking this Egyptian god, and then I'll let her tell the story.
And what happens is, through an intelligence, which Crowley later recognizes holy guardian angel named Aiwass, he receives this book, and the book is received over the course of 3 days. It all starts from noon to 1 p.m. and it takes an hour each day. And through Aiwass, he connects to 3 beings: Nui, Hadi, and Ra-Hoor-Khuit, in that order. So it begins with Nui. Nui is an Egyptian sky goddess. It's not the same as Nut. And Ugaritic Texts see these names are very similar to traditional Kemetic pagan deities, but they are different, right? They're Egyptoid is a term I've heard, and their names are changed for Kabbalistic reasons. Same with like the Babylon thing, and so they are a little different. Basically, there's Nui, Hadi, Ra-Hoor-Khuit. Nui is the divine feminine, Hadi is the divine masculine, and Ra-Hoor-Khuit is the natural child. If you watch my Hermetic Kabbalah video, you're going to see a parallel here. And so each of them sort of gives a different message. And through these, you see a lot of the core teachings of Thelema emerge. We see the Thelemic holidays, like celebrating the equinoxes and certain other holidays that Thelemites recognize. You can hear instruction on how the book is meant to be printed with like a red cover and specific colored text. But as well, we see a lot of core ideas. So this idea of pure will, which we talk a lot about Thelema, about will, because Thelema is the Greek word for will. But we also see this idea of true true will emerge. And true will is sort of a person's highest journey in life. Every person has their own true will, and that's why Ellis do all these rituals. And the idea, it's phrased as pure will in the Book of the Law, but this is the first time this term emerges. As well, the Scarlet Woman is mentioned for the first time in the Book of the Law, and the Scarlet Woman would later become a huge Thelemic concept, and Crowley would have a series of Scarlet Women that he would work with ritualistically. And so through this text, it's all written in a prose poem, and it's very layered. A lot of the lines have very strong Kabbalistic references and references to other parts of Western esotericism. There are, of course, some new ideas, but basically all the core Thelemic teachings are immersed in here, even some things that would come to become like degree structures in Thelemic groups, and even predicted some things that happened in Thelemic history after this book. At first read, this can kind of seem like a pretty poem or a slightly nonsensical rambling, but once you understand Thelemic concepts and a little bit of Kabbalah, you can look at this and see a lot of depth to it. If you want to start reading this book, I really suggest reading it every couple months and working through it. Read it side by side with, of course, this book has something called the Comment that is a very short commentary. The comment in and of itself really won't help you a ton, but Crowley did write a book called The Law is for All, where he gave a lot of help. I find that it's really important to read this again and again and again while studying Thelema, because this really, it comes to life, right? The more you understand Thelema, the more it would become. And as Thelema sort of broke away from the previous occult traditions and became its own, this book becomes so critical. So knowing these three entities is really important, and understanding how this sort of lines out with Thelemic cosmology and some of the Thelemic philosophies will really make it make a lot more sense. I suggest reading it multiple times. I will mention there have been some criticisms of this book, and I would be doing a disservice if I didn't mention them. Some people argue that Aiwass comes from Crowley's subconscious, and since if you believe in a psych model method that the HGA is of the subconscious, you could argue this book is from his subconscious, and that's why you see so many things like Kabbalah in it that sort of resemble things that he would have understood. However, some people argue, and this case kind of makes me laugh a little bit, so I think it's funny, but it actually makes sense. The writing in Crowley's personal poetry versus the writing in the Book of the Law is actually really different. They still use some of the same like meters, because there's certain poetic meters that you see in the book. And then the Ra Horquit chapter is like warlike. It has some of the most transgressive lines in this book in the Ra Horquit section. As well, the Ra Horquit section really focuses on tearing down the old Aeon, which the idea of Aeons is a big thing in Thelema. I can't explain all that in this video, but if you guys would like an Aeon video, I would love to make that. It's a really important idea in Thelema. But basically, in a short version, the Aeon, of course, is when he believed Thelema would reach its full potential and sort of the new world that he wanted to start would begin. So this video is actually sponsored. That's really exciting for me.
By the way, it's actually fun. You get the point. 1 second. I'm just gonna send a text message really quick. All right. Okay, so yeah. Jehovah's Witness is very similar to Christianity. They just kind of rebranded the name of Yahweh to Jehovah. So it's not too different than anything that we've already talked about. Scientology Dianetics. So this is kind of trending right now because I have a Linkin Park poster, and obviously I Cyphers is here, so I one of my videos with Cyphers is about Linkin Park's previous vocalist Chester, but he's now been replaced with, I think her name is Emily or something, and she's a Scientologist. But anyway, so it's kind of come back into popular culture, but we do know there's several famous people that are Scientologists, like Tom Cruise, for example. I came into the study of Scientology, of the sacred books, with judgment, and I was surprised that the books themselves are not that taboo. What it talks about is actually quite interesting and important, and I almost feel healed by certain things that the Dianetics has to say. So yeah, I guess the first thing is that you need to know is that this is what it looks like. Dianetics by L. Ron Hubbard. So it's going to talk a lot about psychology and philosophy and the mind. So this book was actually written before Scientology became a thing. So in 1950, L. Ron Hubbard wrote this, and after writing this is when he started the Church of Scientology. So this is before that, so it's more like a treatise on the mind, and it's so fascinating because it really it's like naturopathy, homeopathy. It's about finding solutions to the illnesses, and he talks about most illnesses in the world are psychosomatic, meaning they stem from the mind. So it's you're self-inscribing mental illnesses, and this book literally talks about healing them without the need for any medical intervention in the traditional, in the modern medical way. It's more uses holistic medicine and energy healing and conversational therapy. So it's kind of like amazing. I read this like on the edge of my seat. Obviously it's been a few days, so it's not fresh on my mind, but I want to see if any of the videos did it justice. But wow, it's actually amazing. And I will say, obviously, I can separate the sacred books from the church. It's as an institution, because the documentaries I've heard that we've all heard about the actual institution is a lot different from the actual books. So if you can separate that and draw like understandings, it's actually a really good read.
Do you know someone who has never fully recovered from a serious loss in life? Or a traumatic experience? And in your own day-to-day life, do you sometimes experience self-doubts, negative thoughts, unreasonable fears, upsets, or irrational behavior? The painful experiences of our past clearly have an effect upon our present behavior, but to what degree and why? What causes the mind to depart from rational thought or behavior? That is the subject of Dianetics. Every moment of your life, your mind is recording everything that's happening to you. Every sight.
Sorry, right now this feels like that scene in The Matrix where Morpheus is like, it's like that scene with the girl in the red dress. So the way he was like, I don't know.
Every sound, every taste, smell, pain, emotion, touch, everything. These recordings form what is called the time track, a consecutive record of all the experiences accumulated throughout your existence. Your mind uses this information to make decisions and solve problems relating to your survival. The better its decisions, the better you survive. Most of this data is stored in your analytical mind, that part of your mind that thinks, remembers, and calculates. But some of your experiences are not recorded into those analytical memory banks. It is a discovery of Dianetics that all of your painful experiences are stored in a previously unknown part of the mind. It's called the reactive mind. And you've probably got...
Good lord. Gosh, like the imagery in this documentary, I hate it. It's too violent. It's kind of not explaining it well either. So let's see if there's another one.
Symbol. The term Dianetics is taken from the Greek words dia, meaning through, and nous, meaning soul. Dianetics is further defined as what the soul is doing to the body. It uses the Greek letter delta as its basic form. The four sections represent the four dynamics, or urges to survive, described in Dianetics. Dynamic 1 is the self-dynamic. It is the thrust to survive as an individual, to obtain pleasure as an individual, and to avoid pain. It covers the general field of food, clothing, individual purpose, procreation, survival conditions, and the urge to survive through a group of individuals. Dynamic 4. It embraces the...
Horrible explanation. Good. Okay, basically, like... The way I would explain it is that there's certain events in our life, especially when we're kids, that our cellular body holds on to, and those aggressions, those micro memories that we hold, they become keyed in during certain moments in our life. So like in order to kind of prevent psychosomatic illnesses is to be aware of those events that could be triggered in your lifetime that could cause a traumatic response for you to become ill. So being aware of that and kind of like being compassionate, because it's just the way the body works. So understanding that there's always going to be these like memories from when we were younger that you just kind of have to let go, because we're like such like a victimized society. But if you understand, like, that's just the natural programming of the body, and you can learn to let go of all these like old like memories that serve you no good anymore. But that's just a foundation. And then let's see what else.
5 million years ago.
Oh, that's it's just a joke.
These are the times now, people. Okay? These are the times we will all remember. Were you there? What did you do? Very, very much. Because we're counting on you.
Okay, that wasn't helpful. Let's see if the Fundamentals of Thought has anything. There's a few books about this.
A Scientology Network exclusive towards the most important principles of Scientology motivates your act, your
want to make you better.
So this is L. Ron Hubbard himself, so maybe we'll actually like get to the source with this. Okay.
On the subject of gradation, I want to talk to you about the root, the bridge. When you first say to somebody, we're going to make you better, or we want to make you better, he immediately asks the question, better what? Bank robber, of course, say you want to become a better bank robber. Spoke about these things, but that's very interesting. It teaches, there's very mobiles, it's improved. Why he says, if you can, in traffic, he's aware of the fact he's introverted. Now, you can be aware of the fact he's introverted, thing that science not think it can, and
horrible. I think what we just gotta do is read the freaking book, because none of this is explaining it right. I find this to be really interesting. So, and obviously I don't ascribe to L. Ron Hubbard himself. He seems like a psycho. Like they all become, but I can still take from it what I can. So it kind of just starts, okay, let's see where I can like pull. Oh, I did like pull some things here. Okay. Okay, the cause and cure of all psychosomatic ills, which some say are man's listed ailments. So the purpose of Scientology, I don't like the they have like trademark words for certain things, but if you like take away the trademark, you just like work with the idea. But so they call them clears. So the goal of Scientology is to become a clear, and it becomes very culty because like they hire not hire they what do you call it when you're like you're getting people to like they have institutions, so they get people to go to these institutions, so that's where it becomes culty. But if you just think about this stuff on your own, you can like avoid the bridge to the cult. But I found it interesting. So they say that clears never get colds, for example. So that's something that a lot of truthers believe, that you can become so strong enough and have such a strong immune system that you don't get sick, you don't get colds, you don't. And so this is very similar to that in that sense. So a clear can be tested for all psychosis, neurosis, compulsions, repressions, and aberrations, and can be examined. These tests confirm the clear to be entirely without such ills. The clear possesses attributes fundamental so the clear, so you smell, you taste, once you're a clear, you become more like you're living your life to the most fullest extent. So the lowest common denominator of man's activities, man's major problems, man's aberrations and general shortcomings. So that's dealing with like that. So obviously everything, so no factors were found necessary in the equation of everything than time, space, energy, and life, and they all have a single denominator. is that to obey a single order, and that is to survive. The goal of life can seem like an infinite survival, and it's not a new thought that man is surviving. It's a new thought that man is motivated only by survival. Okay, so once you get that, talk about so now just to define that, like the man seeks to repel pain. So in order to heal these pains, this is what this kind of like outlines some ways to be. Sorry, it's like really hard to like synthesize all this information. So okay, so the mind records continuously throughout the entire life. All recordings of the lifetime are available. Maybe I can zoom in a bit more. Unconsciousness is when the mind is oblivious to its surroundings. All mental and physical derangements of psychic nature come from moments of unconsciousness. Some moments can be reached and drained of charge. Psychosomatic illnesses are those that have a mental origin, but which are nevertheless organic. About 70% of a physician's current roster of diseases falls into psychosomatic illnesses. There are two kinds of illnesses. The first would be called autogenic, and the second is exogenic. So then it talks about like engrams. Engrams are memories that cause us illnesses. So as you can see, like I don't think I need to go any further for you to be like, okay, I understand, like there's things that you can pull from this that are interesting and that are applicable to a true seeker, and that's all you need to know. There's always going to be like two truths and a lie, or two lies and a truth, you know? So you just kind of sort what you like from it, what you don't. But it's still quite interesting. I do know that beyond these books that kind of talk more about like the soul and like, because a lot of, I think what happens in the Scientology church is like there's certain practitioners that try to help the lower ranking unclears or whatnot. But beyond the practice of like, naturopathy with Scientology, there is an interesting pantheon as well. It's really different. It's got like aliens and stuff. So let me see if I have a good video about that. I think this is it.
Which Scientology's history of mankind is finally revealed. 75 million years ago, a tyrant named Xenu ruled the Galactic Confederation, a coalition of 76 planets. One of these planets was Tigak, which we now call Earth. The Confederation was suffering from an overpopulation problem, so Xenu had billions. He placed their paralyzed bodies around volcanoes, into which he dropped hydrogen bombs. With the bodies now blown up, it calls them, Xenu captured these thetans and implanted them with ideas like religion. The souls were left disorientated, and remain in our body.
I just find that such a deception that it's not until you've given them $100,000 they say, oh, by the way, your body's infested with hundreds and thousands of invisible alien beings. How many people would join Scientology if they were told that on day one?
So yeah, there's a lot of corruption, obviously, and that side of like the creationism is really wonky, but there's got to be something about like, there's got to be something they're hiding, some truths that they're hiding even within that pantheon, if that makes sense. So yeah, I think it's worth looking into. Don't forget it. I think if you're gonna look at everything, just take a look there too. Now, the last one is something that I also was passing a lot of judgment on. I was even afraid to even look at it. But after I read it, I was like, oh, okay. Like, I understand now. So I think a lot of us, when we're researching like the Bible and truth and negative and positive, what we like fail to understand with a lot of this, and what the Satanic Bible kind of brings to light, is that anytime a religion conquered another, they would demonize the other that they worship. So for example, in the Satanic Bible, they talk about how Pan, in Greek mythology, Pan was a god. If you don't remember, let me bring to light an image. Pan, Greek god. So this was Pan, right? As you can see, Pan was a Greek god, and it wasn't necessarily demonic. If not, it was a rather benevolent god. So what Christianity did was take the horns and take the beast, the like half beast mentality, and create the devil. So what the Satanic Bible is only saying is that, look, like the devil has been inverted. Like, Pan was never the devil. They've taken elements from Pan to now put into the Baphomet, to now put into the devil. Why? Because that's the way the Christians can control the narrative. And that's true, because a lot of us who study like Lucifer and whatnot, when we think of Lucifer, in like society mainstream, they force us to think of like the demon, but Lucifer literally means the light bringer. And in the Bible, you know, so like this is what the Satanic Bible is bringing to light. So there's elements from it that I was like, wow, okay, I understand now. Like we'll read some parts of it now. There's other parts that's a very inflammatory language, and I could see why it's a very dangerous book, the Satanic Bible. And by no means do I feel like I adhere to it. All I'm saying is that it is another one of the sacred texts. It's obviously one of the more modern ones. It's but it's still there in the lineup to look at, right? So let me just double check what year it was. 1969, so super recent. I was only in the 1960s, man. Like, so okay, perhaps the most okay, so one of the things is that you got to get rid of your mind is what a Satanist is. In your mind, you think a Satanist is and I'm just talking about the Church of Satan. I don't know about like other denominations of Satan, but in this denomination, you got to get rid of your predisposition of what you think Satan is. Don't think of it as this horned demon. Think of it as a beast. Yes. And why I say that is here, and this is straight from the Bible, the Satanic Bible. This is Anton LaVey's words. It says, the most important social value of this book: deal with carnal desire and the flesh in a logical, rational manner, or lose the struggle for not only men's bodies but also their souls. What that's saying is that we are also beasts. And I think that religion removes that a lot from us. And why I say we're beasts is because we are part of the animal kingdom. And if it were the law of the jungle, we would be in the food chain, the hierarchy of, right? So under, even, so it would be like lions. I mean, if we have no tools and we're like surrounded by lions, like, sorry, but the law of the jungle dictates that they've got, or more probability of winning over us. Like a bear can maul us, a lion can maul us. There's so many animals that could theoretically take down a human, right? So we are part of nature, we are part beast, we are part animal. And what So that's what a Satanist is. A Satanist is just a beast. A Satanist is just an animal. A Satanist is just a human being. So that's what you got to take out from this is that, right? Because a lot of what religion does is brainwash us to remove us from the animal kingdom and make us seem like we're separate. We don't even think about nature anymore. We don't even think about hunting and gathering and fighting for our lives and survivalism. And we don't even think about that anymore. We are so like indoctrinated into this concept of like civilization that it's now even like become taboo to like be in naked even, and we were born naked but okay, so there are a lot of like there's predispositions about what Satanists do and stuff, and I think one thing that I am happy about is that this book doesn't condone and senseless abuse or a senseless way of carrying yourself or giving into your will as much as I thought it, or I had predisposed or believed. It doesn't say like go out and hurt people, go out and, you know what I mean? Like it's more about like just taking back that power of like don't let yourself be persuaded by the Catholic Church or the Christian Church or any of these to like feel like you have to negate yourself or put yourself lower. Look, it even talks about psychic vampires, and I think that's one thing that you got to understand is that this, if you take it in the benevolent way, you can take this in the malevolent way too, but I'm talking about if you try to read this in the benevolent sense, what you can take of it that is benevolent is your right to fight for yourself, to your right to not. And okay, this is the problem. Like I grew up very Catholic and Christian, surrounded by me. Like I never self-proclaimed I was that, but that was what I was familiar with. That was my surrounding, and a lot of the people I know grew up in Christian or Catholic, and it teaches us to be very very much like snowflakes. I would say very much like too polite to the sense that we are lose our own voice. So we put others ahead of us, and to the sense that we hurt ourselves. And that's been true in my own life, that I've kind of let people walk over me several times, several times. And that's all because of my Christian Catholic upbringing, that I should be like that. But this helped me rearrange my mind, that to realize that I am just an animal like anyone else, and part of being part animal is knowing that you have every right within yourself to stand up for yourself. So this book is about standing up for yourself, cutting away psychic vampires and all that. So yeah, there's really things you can take out of any book, and if you're gonna learn anything from my research, just know that just what I'd say is like don't go into any of these books with any predisposition. Just learn what you can from it, like I said earlier. But yeah, the way he writes is really interesting too, and if it's one of the most like intellectual writers. The way he writes is very, very, very persuasive. But again, like with every religion, there's just horrible things that have to be attached to it. And again, there's people that take this and read it, and they look at it through a malevolent lens, and they use it as a means to push their own will further than it should be. So that's not the case. That's not good either. But yeah, that's kind of it. Let me see if any of these videos are any good.
On the 30th of April 1966, Satanism became an organised religion for the first time in humanism, rationalism, child abuse, series, LaVeyan Satanism.
No, terrible video. Let's see.
The Satanic Bible,
a seminal text by Anton LaVey that has been pivotal in shaping contemporary Satanism. Published in 1969, this work not only codified a formal movement of Satanism, but also presented a comprehensive ideology of Lucifer, the practical magic outlined in the Book of Life for alive and vibrant. 90s, a Satanic Bible remained, and as a reflection of his constructed persona. The division of Satanic Bible into 4 books, Satan, Belial, Lucifer, and Leviathan, presents a multifaceted exploration of Satanic ideology and practice, advocating a materialistic, hedonistic lifestyle underpinned by a critical stance towards traditional esotericism and religion. The book's prefatory material seems by Anton LaVey himself, but derived from Might is Right around the expansion of the 9 Satanic statements. Unlike the preceding book's more provocative content, the Book of Lucifer adopts a tone that is more evocative, critiquing established religions, magicians' desires without the metaphysical underpinnings of Crowley's wheel concept.
I love the comment. So do no harm, but take note. Yep. And then don't cause any loss, injury, harm. If you do, take accountability. Yeah. I think there's not going to be a good video that encapsulates it.
Long ago, before the world as we know it existed, there was a beautiful angel named Lucifer. He was one of God's most magnificent creations. In heaven, Lucifer was known for his brilliance and beauty. He was adorned with precious stones, and his appearance was radiant, reflecting the glorious light of God. Lucifer was not just any angel. He was among the highest ranking, possessing great wisdom and power. He was a leader of worship and was deeply admired in heaven. His role was to bring glory to God through music and praise. However, something changed in Lucifer. Despite his high position and the honor given to him, he became proud. His heart was a third of the angels in heaven to join him.
Now, this is again the traditional story, so I feel like everyone gets it wrong. Like, this is why I feel like you just gotta read the text, because like you're not gonna find very much good videos on this at all. Let me see if there's any line. So again, it talks about survivalism in the sense that like you can't remove that from this world, and so you got to be strong in that sense that you've got to if you've got to uphold your beliefs and your own worldview and not let anyone walk over it, basically, is what this is saying. Again, it's just too much to like go through. Also, I've been streaming for quite a while now. I've been looking through like a lot. But everything combined gives such a good foundation to what you want to build. So I guess the last thing I'll leave it is my my character list. So it's getting quite wild, but I'm starting to like kind of piece things together from this research. So as I said, I started with the 8 primordial energies. I'm gonna kind of tweak them. I feel like there's stuff from like Norse, Celtic, and a few other religions that I haven't yet incorporated it. Right now it's a bit like more Egyptian and Sumerian. So I'm gonna kind of try to include more of that. But then we have the simulation, the creation of the Titans, the overthrow of the Titans by the Archons, aka like you've got your Zeus, your Heras, your Poseidons here. And here's like Egyptian, Greek, Jewish mysticism. A lot of these are monotheistic. So if it's got like a black bar, that means that religion is monotheistic. But there are several pantheons. And then down here is kind of something I'm just trying to figure out. So I'm not figured it out yet. But we do have the humans starting to evoke. So the first human male, the Lilith, and all that. So and I'm gonna start adding like the Grim Reapers. Like there's a Grim Reaper almost in every pantheon. So yeah, now you can see like how I'm kind of building my world, my character list based off of the pantheon and the cosmogony and the world build from all these sacred texts. And again, I'm not done. This is why I called it a study hall, because I was like, let me just take you guys through what I would like do my research like on or how I would put my research together. And yeah, I'm gonna finish my presentation. I'll make a video, put it out on the channel so you guys get a bit more of a redacted version of this. I'm gonna formulate it based off the numbers, because we already got that 9 and 8 going on, and then there was like certain, like in Buddhism there's like certain numbers, so I'll go through them by number, like the important numbers from each religion, the important themes, and so you guys can like scrub from end to if you're writing your own. And then after that, I'm gonna look at some of the political writings. Like we kind of skipped over them, but for example, we'll look more into the Epic of Gilgamesh, or we'll look more into the Iliad and the Odyssey. So I'm gonna make a whole new list of like political writings or essays or poetry that aren't exactly sacred texts, but that have more to look at. And after we're done with that, then we will go into like this fiction novels. We'll study, like I said, we'll start with like Dracula and Frankenstein, and then we'll go into Lord of the Rings, and you know, like we'll go from Harry Potter and all that. But thanks for sticking with the first full installment of Sacred Text. Hopefully it was fun to go through it. And yeah, I really appreciate the time you spent with me today. Hope you guys have a great week ahead, and I will catch you all next time. Toodaloo. That's it for now.